but I believe we will have some member comments at some point, so what I'll probably do is sort of talk amongst ourselves here, and then towards the end we'll solicit feedback from the audience. So
what happened to the conference table? I was used to doing these work sessions around a conference table where you can actually work.
yeah, I don't know. We'll have to consider that for next time.
Duly noted.
It's tough when you do it right before the full board. So
It makes it hard to. Makes it
We
difficult.
brought Bum Live for the
Richard, yeah.
the land use
Here,
lawyers.
ready to go.
Maybe we can bring our chairs in there into this.
Okay.
yeah, if we feel like we need to. So I guess we'll officially get going here, and
So, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mark Looney with Cooley. Let me just set the table a little bit about what we've been trying to do since the last time that we met. Gather a little bit more information, listen to some of the things that you all talked about the last time, and then be able to have a little bit more informal dialogue about some of the things that maybe we're doing right, some of the things we're not doing right, and things that we want to have changed. One of the questions that came up in sort of the earlier presentations is that there's somewhat of a model for this type of use being located in call it the original part of Reston, over on Colts Neck Drive, and we were having some esoteric discussions about kind of what were the similarities, what were the differences between the Colts Neck project that's now under construction and this site in terms of size of the parcel, size of the building, relationship to the surroundings. Eka and Mosley Architects are the architects who have designed the building that's now under construction for Colts Neck, and so we had good information to be able to draw from in terms of that as a model and sort of where do we fit within this. And I'm not saying that we have to replicate what they did by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's important to sort of put it in context of, you know, what other precedents are out there, how does this relate to that, what are some options and things that we can do in response to that or in relationship to that that might inform this conversation. So what we did was took the property and the site plan for the Colts Neck project, then overlaid on top of it the property and the two different schemes that we've shared with you for this site. What you see up on the screen there and that we've handed out some paper copies of is the Colts Neck project with the original design of Kensington's product overlaid on top. And in round numbers, kind of the gray area that's shaded underneath, not the cross-hatched area, is the Colts Neck project. And we've included in there different sizes and dimensions. So if you look on the lower side of the page, you'll see the gray areas that show 3 stories above grade, 4 stories above grade, and then the proximity of that wing of the building to the adjacent Hunters Crossing condominium community that's abutting it, and it goes from 57 feet at its closest to 62 feet on the other side. And then as you go farther to the east, out along Colts Neck Road, you'll see the 3-story section of the building sits about 75 feet from the closest Hunters Crossing condominium unit, and then transitions up to 4 stories as it moves along that edge. And then the middle part of the building are both 4 stories transitioning to 5 stories above grade in relation to Hunters Crossing. The red in the crosshatched represents the property of the Kensington project and its proximity then to the Wethersfield cluster that's in reverse. And so what we have are sort of the mirror images where the Wethersfield cluster is to the north of the project in relation to what we have. And you'll see that at the closest point on the original design that we had, which had 4 stories along the lower portion of the page and 3 stories on the upper portion of the page because it was tucked into the hillside. The closest unit off of that 3-story face of Kensington's building was about 56 or 57 feet. And then the units that are parallel to Approach Lane sit about 136 feet away from the front of the building. So in comparison to the Colts Neck project, we've got 3 stories, anywhere from 57 to 62 feet away on one end and as close as 75 feet on the other end. With this particular design that Kensington had, it was 57 feet on one end and up to 136 feet on the other end, again off of a 3-story elevation on that north side of the building. For comparison purposes, you'll also see that the size of the Colts Neck project is bigger. The Colts Neck project itself is bigger. It is a total of 210 rooms and beds, split between assisted living in one wing and independent living in the other wing. The Kensington project, by contrast, is just 125 to 130 beds in total, with about 91,000 square feet in size. If you then, if you look at sort of the length of that building, it probably takes up 2/3, roughly, of the length of the Colts Neck building. If you then flip over to the next page, we then took the 4 to 5 story building that we showed you in Scheme 2 at the last DRB full session. Do you have that? You need me to do it?
That's the overlay. On the next page.
Oh, it's the next page.
Drop down there. There you go.
There we go.
There we go. So go down to page 2. Yeah, there you go. So anyway, so this again building shows the same relationships in terms of to the Colts Neck to Hunter's Crossing, and then the proposed Kensington building to Weathersfield. And with the 4 to 5 story design, where the 4 stories is above grade, at the top of the page on the Kensington design, we're about 60 feet away at the closest unit and about 147.5 feet away to the approach lane side. And obviously what we talked about last time was trying to create the view shed from those units that are, or maintain the view shed for those units that are along approach lane. And then the footprint of the building at that point becomes probably 40% of the footprint of the Colts Neck project relative to the length of the building and its dimensions across. It's obviously a shorter and skinnier building with the 4 to 5 story, both in comparison to what we proposed before, as well as the relationship to Colts Neck. So is this necessarily dispositive of where things would go? No. But it is informative to sort of set the stage of what similar projects look like in relationship to their surroundings that have gotten approval of the Design Review Board and have been viewed as compatible with the surroundings and consistent with what Reston intends. We think this is a pretty clear demonstration that we're not out of the ballpark, and there are some things that we can do to try to further mitigate some of the concerns that you all have. But we thought it was at least informative to put this in front of you.
Okay,
So I'll stop there and see if you have any questions about that component first.
I'd just like to jump in here if I could. This is a design workshop session, whatever. It's supposed to be an hour long. We're now down to 50 minutes. I appreciate your comparisons. This, however, is not Colts Neck. There's hundreds of reasons why Colts Neck got approved where it is. It backs up to a park to begin with, and I could go on and on and on. We could beat this to death for the next hour and not get anywhere. I think it's been pretty clear from everything you've heard from the DRB so far that everything has been presented, both Scheme 1 and 2, in all their machinations of different elevations and stuff, this board is not happy with. I don't think we're going to approve it. It is too big, it is too massive, it overshadows the neighborhood, and I think what I was hoping we could get to tonight would be what are you all willing to do, and not come back with the same thing. We need 91,000 square feet, we need X, we need Y. I don't see how that's going to happen. This is a lovely comparison, but I don't see how it's going to happen. You had one sketch, this sketch, that was in your packet, and this is the only attempt I see of you guys responding to anything we've been saying for the last 3 months. And I think it's a good start. I mean, I've got a sketch of my own of how we might be able to get to this. I could get about 80,000 square feet on there without going above 3 floors. And I think that's what I was hoping we could get to tonight, and not be comparing to Colts Neck or for anything else. This is site specific for this site. I want to see if we can get somewhere, and that's what I was hoping. If this is all we've got, to start with, then that's where I want to start. I don't want to go through the designs we've seen already. I don't think they're going to get approved. They're too big, they're too massive, et cetera, et cetera. You heard all this for the 3 meetings you all have been here. So if we can start here, forget Colts Neck. I mean, I think we might actually get somewhere in the 45 minutes we have left. Now, so the question is, what can you guys do to respond to all the comments you've been hearing in 3 meetings to try to make this work? And comparing it to Colts Neck, I'm sorry, is a waste of my time. I want to see what, this is a design review board. What can you guys do? What are you willing to do to get to where we have some possibility of approving this? I bought my own bum wad here, got my squeezy pen, you know, we can start writing on the walls if we have to, but that's what I thought this was about, okay? So with that in mind, can you guys start telling us what you can do? What do you feel you can do in response to all the comments you've had in, what, 3 meetings now, where we're saying too big, too massive, too this, too that?
Yeah.
What can we do? Can we get the whole building down to 3 floors and no more?
Well,
If not, then we're going to have a problem.
What we're trying to do is, if possible, is to get from you all definition of, you know, how far away or how close can we be to weather shield, or, you know, and how big the mass is that is, in your opinion, is more appropriate for that side, be it 3-story or 2.5-story or 2-story. If we can get that kind of a criteria, it would be easier for us to start and try to fit in the program into and be able to, I think, respond more positively.
Yeah, well, I was hoping in the 3 meetings we've had, you kind of got that message.
Well, the message was, you know, it's a bit vague in a way to us.
Right. I mean, Richard, we've gotten, I think, some mixed messages among individual members. I mean, we sort of took the straw poll the last time, and we had a mixture of, we thought phase 1 or scheme 1 was closer. We had others who said scheme 2 was closer. So kind of the internal dialogue within the DRB about whether to go taller and skinnier or shorter and fatter hasn't been consistent. And so part of what, you know, as Echo was saying, as a starting point would be, is it better to go taller and skinnier or longer and flatter?
Well, I think what we have to be careful of here too, and I don't think you got a clear message, as you said, the last time, because you kind of, it's what's called, I think it's Hobkin's choice. Here are 2 really bad examples. Which one do you like better? And if you heard anything about either one, I don't think that's fair to say, well, obviously you guys favored this one over here because someone said they liked it. I don't think anybody here liked either one. So I don't want to get into an argument about, well, we misled you by saying the short fat one or the tall fat one was better than the other one. I don't think anyone ever said that.
Understood, and I'm not suggesting that you
yeah.
did that. What I'm trying to figure out is, I mean, you know, one of the things that we can do, right, is that the building is somewhat, I'll call it straight across. And
Let me try this another way.
Okay.
Okay? Architect to architect, designer to designer. If my client came to me and said, look, I'm having trouble with this board. The building's too massive, it's too tall, it impinges on the neighborhood, it's going to decrease property values all around. What can I do? I need to tighten this thing up. That's where I want to get. And that's what, if I had a client like this, that's hopefully what they would say to me. I would go right back to my ivory tower, get my pen out, and start trying to make that happen. And that's what I'm hoping we can do tonight in the 44 minutes we have left. So
Okay.
what can we do to get to that point? I don't know if it's short and fat or tall and skinny or whatever it is. The first question is, how much can you constrict it if you have to? If you can still get your 91,000 square feet in a building we all think works, that's fine. I'm not saying you can't do that, but so far, all the stuff I've seen, I couldn't approve in that neighborhood, right where it is. So that's what I'm trying to get at.
Did you all have any ideas after the last meeting for things you wanted to potentially talk about?
No, I think, yeah. Through the last time, we're not quite sure what. Well, we know that you don't like both of them, like I'm saying. So we're coming back and try to see if we can somehow separate some of the floor in a way, and and you know, so far this is the kind of alternate that we can still accept because it still work within the program of the internal spaces. To get two tower completely separated, it does not really satisfy any of the program. So that's bottom line of it. I can't really make it any smaller with the number of the unit in the program, and also I cannot separate the building into two completely separate tower because they're all interconnected with each other.
So what are we looking at here, Eka, in terms of?
So what we come up with was this is based on the 3-story, 4-story, 3-story above the parking garage. The top floor, I guess the 4th level is separated, and they both sides can come out to the rooftop garden. So the rooftop garden would be only 3-story, meaning it's 2-story from the weather shield townhouses. But the question here is still that the front bulk of the building is still blocking the view from the townhouses on that's parallel to it, which is different from the 5-story option, which basically leave it blank.
Well, it's obvious when you go out and sit at the site, like I did this afternoon, there begins to be a separation the closer you get to Sunrise Valley from your property and the townhouses. To begin with, they're set further back. The tree cover is thicker, and so on. It's when you get back into that wedge at the back, that's why I was looking at, well, what can you do back there? And I could get at least 100+ feet away from the closest house back there. Just a real quick sketch. I don't have anything to scale, but I'm trying to, see what we can do.
Even with this alternate, we get, I think it's close to like 80 feet away from the closest townhouses, and we can still push a little bit more, I guess.
But how tall is this?
This is a 3-story.
All of that? This whole thing's 3-story?
The side
3-story,
facing
yes.
townhouses.
The brown shaded one is just a 3-story. The light kind of green, that's 2-story above the garage.
Oh, so the garage has moved above ground now. It was below ground before.
It's always been there, so you come in.
The grade at the entrance is about 12 or 13 feet lower than the grade at the rear of the.
Okay, so the building itself is only 3 levels.
Yeah.
I'm just clarifying what you were just saying. Okay.
Yeah.
The entrance would be here, 2 stories in the middle, 3 stories on either side as viewed from the townhouse.
I think this is a big idea here. I think this is worth the work session just to see this. The way you've slid this piece that's closest, the part to the right, looking at the drawing there, breaks down the mass, pulls it farther away from the townhouses, keeps it at 3 stories. I think when I've looked at this and thought about it, trying to make the mass of this building feel more in scale with the townhouses satisfies the adjacency of those townhouses as an issue. I know it's also part of the convenience center, but massing-wise, it seems like it has to respond to those townhouses. And preserving tree buffer is something we've talked about at every single session. This would seem to maintain the most tree buffer by jogging that last piece farther away. You're not really telling us how much better it is in terms of tree preservation. But when you go out there and you look at the site, the topography is working in your favor. This is why I still think a shorter, broader building is better than a tower, certainly if the tower is back next to the golf course, because the topography works with you. You're looking largely over the top of the existing single-story building and doing the tricks you're doing here and keeping the tree buffer there, keeping it at 3 stories. All of that is consistent with what I've been looking for. I just still feel a little bit like we don't get, and this sounds a little harsh, I don't mean it to, but can't we somehow get just better drawings of how this is going to be? Um, I see this, we have a lot of plan work. What is it experientially like? I don't think this board comprehends how much below those townhouses this site is. It's a steep drop-off down the hill to where the first story is here. And there's massive tree cover out there that you can be taking advantage of if you don't tear it down. I'd like to, when you come back, assuming you're coming back yet again, work on the exhibits. We talk about site sections, but the site sections that we get these days are not the quality that we used to get. And I blame it on Revit. I blame it on the draftspeople in the offices. I don't know what it is, but we don't get good exhibits the way we did 20 years ago that show what is this thing going to look like relative to the townhouses, relative to the convenience center. And the board is left, and I think that's why there was a slight leaning when you gave them this, as I agree with Richard, it's kind of a false choice. The majority of the board was going to this smaller footprint because we don't really know what these buildings look like relative to anything else. And so the only thing we have to go on is how massive the footprint looks. Oh, look, it's not covering so much of the site. It must be better. I think this low slung approach is the way to go. I said that, though, at the last meeting. And preserving the buffer, preserving the canopy, preserving the fact that you're down the hill. The minute the building becomes tall, you may as well be at the same elevation as the townhouses. Keep the building low profile, and then you're downhill from the townhouses, everything's working in your favor. And I like the breaking up of the pieces. But, that's just going from this. I mean, diagrammatically, it's compelling to me, though.
Richard, I know you did a drawing. Did you want to actually share that with them at all?
No, it basically does kind of what they've done with this drawing, is it pulls it away from the townhouses that are the closest in the upper right corner, lower right corner there, whatever. That was one of the things we kept hearing in all the meetings, is pull it away from the townhouses. When you go out there, the tree cover is at its worst right at that point.
Mhm.
And it's the narrowest thing. So if you're pulling away from that, I think that's positive. I mean, the little sketch I did just did that. It took where are the least trees, where are the most trees. And I think, as Neil points out, if this is all three-story, I couldn't tell from here. I guess it does say that now that I see it, but I printed it out at home and I couldn't really read it. So it's possible then that some of your next steps, trying to give you some direction a little bit, architecturally there are things you could do, and maybe you don't do peaked roofs, so it's even lower. I mean, there's so many other things you could do that will decrease this visual impact on the neighbors, so that's just another comment. Happy to have other people talk for a while.
What's the finished floor elevation of the proposed versus the existing, approximately? What's the differential?
The proposed, I mean this one?
The finished floor elevation of the proposed versus the existing townhouses?
Which floor?
First floor, ground floor.
Ground floor is, the ground floor, the garage, or the first floor.
Level 2.
Yeah, level 2 is about 6 feet lower than the parallel townhouses. I
Okay.
think that one is 425 and this one is 4.
About 6 feet.
Technically, your first floor is only 6 feet lower than the first floor of the townhouses?
Yeah.
Higher.
What you're saying?
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear that.
Yeah, it looks like a
6,
lot.
8 floor, 8 feet maybe, 6, 8 feet, but
But that's in the back, right?
yeah.
In the middle of the site, it's called more
Looks like
Yeah,
it's
it's up.
Like,
it's
it's
about
like-
10
I
or
don't
12
know
feet.
exactly, but guessing
It's like
from
close.
from the existing
back
contour,
it's
it's about 425, 424 is their first floor, but
Yeah,
it
it's
could be
quite a
higher.
drop. It's-
A lot of contour lines there.
Were you going to say something?
I was going to ask, in addition to probably some of the comments we made about buffer at the Sunrise Valley edge, what other constraints are holding you back? So in other words, it looks like that,
Eastman, there is a stormwater easement.
so that corner,
Right.
that leftmost corner is right at the easement line? That's right on your house. What about this way?
Oh, we. But we don't have any contracts.
So it could move? It could
What's
move
that?
or not? It could
Yeah,
move?
it sounds like it could move, and I'm wondering if you could get more space in between the two masses. By doing that, it extends your entryway maybe more than desirable, but for them. You know, just to get a little bit, without the barbell, separate the two ends a little bit more.
Are you able to do that, you know?
Do you want it to move even closer to Sunrise Valley?
Well, I mean, we're talking about ideas, right? I mean, if what people are liking about this is the separation of the masses, and you can do that even more so, because I still feel like for these folks here, although I guess part of the advantage is that we're going to still have more tree cover for this person here, it's still affect with them is not appreciably better. Might help. But again, I think that goes to Neil's comments about the experience. We're sort of left to imagine what that might be like. But right now, it looks like you're still looking at the side of a wall. How much further away is this than the?
About 30 feet. You're about 50 feet away now, and now you're 80 with
It's
this.
80, 85, something like that right now. And that's into the two-story portion of, not the three-story part of the building.
And does that translate directly into more tree canopy saved existing?
Yeah.
It's just all that space goes back to landscaping.
Yeah.
Right.
And so if you look at this exhibit in the package, this was the original scheme. The second time that we showed this, where we added more tree save, and so we were mostly losing trees down along that, I guess it would be the western edge along the golf course, and then a couple around the corner there where the patio was going to be, and that's in effect what we pulled back. So this corner down in here probably gets larger in terms of the tree save. You still have some abutting the golf course down here if we tuck it that far down into the site.
I guess parking garages don't lend themselves to staggered facades. I mean, I think part of this, you start to see this as a new piece of the cluster that's adjacent. And you sort of want to stagger it and set it back and have it articulate like it's not a massive building, but like it's a little more sympathetic with the staggering of the cluster row houses. And so I was sitting here wondering, well, why don't we do more of that? I mean, you have these slight articulations in this sketch, and I think all of that would help it break down the scale, be more compatible, be more residential, and continue to push that. You know, looking back again at the early stuff, I mean, I think we said back at the time it was sort of handsome senior living imagery, maybe not exactly Reston, certainly not contemporary per se. It's rather traditional. It's competent. It's very competent. It's very good. It just feels like maybe though the wrong type of look in that place. And we're not asking you to design in the 1970s vocabulary, but color-wise, maybe you know, the dormers. Maybe they're a different type of dormer. Maybe they're not the little Georgian-looking dormers. Maybe they're a little more shed-like or something. I mean, it feels like once you start to solve the massing that you can then go back and articulate this, study trying to do this in a more sympathetic architecture facade-wise as well.
Quick question, what's this dash line on your sketch? That's
I think it's the original plan.
That's the original, okay.
Yeah,
The original
the first scheme.
first scheme.
Yeah.
And you said we're currently 80 feet away from the closest townhouse, is that correct?
Yes.
What is it at that back corner? So the 80 feet, I believe you said, is right here? Is that correct?
I think
No,
the
it's
one
back
back,
No, the back.
Back here. This townhouse here,
It's right where you asked.
this way.
Right there, okay. Well, I think you're hearing a lot of good comments here. I mean, obviously, you're trying to work with us, and we certainly appreciate it. That back corner was, to me, the biggest challenge. That it was right there, right next to their unit, and just definitely caused a lot of issues there. So personally, I think it's come a long way. I'm enjoying hearing the comments from the rest of the folks. I do like Graham's idea about pushing that closer a little bit more, if you can. Obviously, there's always challenges with utilities and things like that up
Now,
there.
there may be a trade-off too. I mean, I'm fearful of them doing that, just taking that, going full bore, and then us saying, well, what are you doing so close to Sunrise Valley, right? So it's,
I mean, the reality is a lot of the buildings along that corridor are close and are going to continue to be close to Sunrise Valley. So if I had to pick, I'd rather have it be closer to Sunrise Valley than the back corner. So anything that helps sort of pull it away seems like a good strategy. And obviously, we've said the whole time, the more trees save, the better.
In terms of sliding it, I mean?
Just pulling it away from the back corner.
Yeah, that back corner seems to be the biggest problem. Because the other units are further away, right? And it's not as
Bent back.
and bent back. Yeah. So certainly, I appreciate you taking the effort to respond to our comments and the comments of the members.
Yeah, I think it's good. It's a good direction. I'd like to hear. There's a whole bunch of people here. I'd be curious to see what they all have to say. I mean, generally, I think what we, as a board, have been trying to do is to get the mass reduced. At some point, you had 5 floors, 4 floors, so on and so forth. What I'm hearing now is all of this you're proposing is 3 levels with a 2-level connection in the middle. I think breaking it up into 2 pieces, that works well. I mean, it worked well to Harrison that Mark and I lived with for, 2 years to try to get that thing through. And it finally worked. It really helped reduce the mass, and that's what we've been consistently trying to get, pardon me, or have happen. I really think the part of your building closest to Sunrise Valley will almost not be visible from the neighbors. When I was out there this afternoon, now when the leaves fall off the trees, yeah, you're probably going to see it. But then I think it's going to be a challenge architecturally to do what you can to visually reduce it as much as you can, whether that's roofs or no roofs, well, you have to have a roof, or no sloped roofs, no, you know what I'm trying to say, is you lower the scale. I mean, like the JVG project up here, which is all flat roofs, not that you need to do that here, but all of a sudden that is another thing an architect can do to bring down the mass. But I'd be curious if there are any, if generally what we're seeing is a 3-story building, smaller, pulled farther away, we're waiting for the architecture. This seems to me to be progress. I think this is going, I think, a direction that is going to be just better. But if there are people here that live next door, I'd be curious to see what they think about this. I mean, when I was out there this afternoon, sitting in my car, the first 2 floors, it looks like you're going to have a hard time seeing. But once you start getting above a 2nd floor, then you're going to see it. And I think now if it went 2 floors above that, or even 3, that's what we've been discussing. And if you're down to 3 floors, there's going to be 1 level over there that you're really going to see then because of the drop.
Yeah,
I think it's more than you said. I'd like to see a section cut through there to see, but it looks to me like about a 10 or 12 foot drop.
In the middle of the site, it is about 12.
Okay, I mean, it's substantial. Yeah. So, anyway.
Any other comments?
Just clarification, you had mentioned it's about 80 feet from that corner, and we talked about, in the other section, about 136, 147. What were you saying is this, with this roughly from the other townhouses along?
So this was the 80-foot
Yep.
location here.
Yeah.
And then we probably slid this down a little bit, so that's probably somewhere in the 140-foot range, give or take.
Is it to the parallel one?
Yeah.
Yeah, around 150.
I'm sorry,
Maybe about 150 feet.
just wanted to get a sense of how that
About
was.
150.
Probably not quite that much, but somewhere between 140 and 150.
The other thing I just wanted to express, and I know we're not there yet, but the sensitivity to some of the comments we heard from the neighbors about stylistically when we get to that point, trying to be more consistent with
Yeah,
those townhomes, that neighborhood.
yeah, we will do that.
That's all I have. Ken, do you have any thoughts, comments?
Yeah, actually, I'm in agreement with everything that Neil, Richard, all the colleagues here have shared. This is a sketch that sort of got me intrigued as well. So thank you for throwing that in. I think that probably saved the evening to a certain extent. I agree if there's a way we can, again, this is just a sketch, but if there are thoughts that you could take into account about perhaps moving the section closest to Sunrise a little bit. I also agree that if you can play with, and we're early into this, but if you can play with the architectural aspects of this, where you can perhaps create the perception of lowering the visual cues or containing them a little bit better, I think those are things you could take into consideration. I'm also looking at, and again, I'm the lay person here, but since you basically broke the section closest to Sunrise in such a way, I'm curious if we can get as creative with the other section to try to visually, reduce the visual lines from the townhouse. If I can get more of the golf course view, because we can break the other section or turn it a little bit or what have you. Those are the thoughts that I would have. But again, I'm the lay person here. But if I were playing with the model at home, I'd be doing what I think all of us like to do and just work these things around within the space given and see if I can put a square peg in a round hole. But I think this sort of saved the evening here. A ways to go, but that's all I have. Curious what our neighbors and friends have to say.
Anything else you guys would like to add or respond to our comments before I ask for some member comments?
Come on up to me. Are we able to talk?
So, 1 minute, please. Yeah.
Can we just, on the architecture real quick?
Yep.
Something that's a little more contemporary in style, look towards flatter roofs as opposed to pitched roofs in order to bring the mass and scale down. Perhaps try to do a little more articulation on that western edge closest to the townhouses if we can do it. Any other elements that you're concerned about or want us to think about architecture-wise other than that?
I'm not as convinced that the flat roof is the way to go. I mean, I think that you need to demonstrate to us what's going to look good. Could be flat roof. But again, my sense is we're trying to make this look as residential as it can look. And if you're looking down on it at all, I'd rather look down on a roof than on a flat roof with some equipment that, even if it's screened, looks kind of commercial. Not that there aren't flat roof residential buildings here in Reston that are successful. So just, the architect is very capable of figuring it out.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I think always helps us too, if you bring pictures of the neighboring units and the commercial units and other buildings in the area to, remind us of what things look like. We've all driven by there, but it helps to see it when you're presenting. So, and take cues from those buildings.
Maybe as a comment, I know a lot of times we sort of get the same presentations that P&Z get when we're at these early stages of just how you're going to use the property. Tends to be a lot of 2D plan work. Tends to look like civil engineering more than architecture. And I think in this case, because of the neighbors especially, we're asking you to get to the architecture a little sooner than maybe happens with some development projects, because I think it's so impactful. 3D model is really helpful and should be done. I mean, I just think it needs to be done, and the topography accurately modeled.
And how it relates to the neighbors. I think that's going to be really important in this case. It always is, but especially here.
Just one other comment too. We, as concerned as we are about the residential stuff to your south, I guess it's the south. When you drive down the street, somehow this also has to work with the little center that's next door too. And I'd love to see if you can drop a model of this into a photograph of coming down that hill with the center here and what this building's going to look like as it gets tucked in there, I think that would be helpful too, because a lot of people are going to see it from that side, and we've kind of ignored that side in most of our discussions. So I'd just like to see what it looks like from that side as well. And then agree, I wasn't trying to say, I mean, flatter roofs is one trick an architect has. You guys got lots of other tricks. It needs to look right. We want it to be as beautiful as you guys want it to be. So it's up to you what you do with the roofs.
All right, so we have a full board meeting at 7, so I'm going to allow us to keep going until a couple of minutes before, and then we're going to need to stop. And so please be mindful of that. I guess it looks like we have a few people, we'll give you the 3 minutes, but just be respectful that other folks might want to provide comments, and try to keep your comments to constructive ideas and things that will help. If it's, to just stop the project, that's probably not a helpful comment. So I guess if, do all of you want to talk, or raise your hand if you want to speak? Okay, so we'll start with you. Please say your name and let us know who you are, but this is an informal.
Good afternoon, I'm Louis Succi. I'm from 2029 Approach Lane, which is adjacent immediately to this. Just to make sure we're all on the same page and clear, this proposed sketch, while it does look like it moves the lines back a bit, it's essentially the same footprint and the same height as option 1 has been. They're not proposing to dig lower, and they're not reducing a floor. So you can call it 3, but it's still option 1. In a sense, there's now a break in the middle, which is a step in, in a positive direction. But I just want to make sure that everyone here is understanding that in the audience as well. I think that's my major comment, just to make sure that we're clear, that it's not a reduction in the height. Also, just for awareness, when we talk about the grade and how this is way down the hill from Approach Lane itself has a grade, and there's a significant height variation and differential from the middle of Approach Lane, where the houses parallel to this are, and the end, where the houses are closest to the end. The end of the street around the circle is probably almost a level below the houses in the middle of Approach Lane. So there's not the height differential, and there's not the hill at that end. So I just want to make sure that's clear to everyone as well. I know some of you have actually gone to site and visited it. That's, again, why a 3D model probably would help. But just understanding that it's not a uniform street, it's not one line, and we're not all flat at the level 2 level. Is something important to understand. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Someone want to come up next?
Hi, I'm Stephen Cherney, 2011 Approach Lane. I'm also the president of the Wethersfield Cluster Association. And I just, want to bring to the attention of the board that the association held a special meeting on May 11th. All 5 board members were there, as were, I think we had a total of 22 or 23 people, the residents in the cluster. And after a discussion about this, about the Kensington proposal, the board did vote to take a position officially in opposition to this, to the Kensington proposal as it's been presented previously, both schemes 1 and scheme 2. The sentiment of the board and the community is that the mass and height of this building is inappropriate at this location so close to a residential community. As I mentioned at the last DRB meeting, we also have a problem, if something does get built here, with the architectural style, we would like to see a more contemporary style, similar to the Colts Neck project that's under development now. But I just want to reaffirm, or just, ask this board to, and of course we haven't had a chance to really fully review this particular proposal until we see elevations and much more detailed drawings. But we, we are looking to you to support us. If this goes on to the Planning and Zoning Committee and beyond that, I'm a former member of the P&Z. we do have some arguments regarding the Reston master plan that we want to talk about there as well. But I think the important thing to remember is that, maybe not saying this in a sort of planning law, in a planning law way, but this is not a by right project. You know, there's a lot of language in Reston Association documents. There's the strategic plan, a document entitled The Essential Elements of Reston, that talk about projects must be environmentally sensitive, compatible with, and considerate of their surroundings, including consideration of building heights and placements. So we are really looking to the DRB to hold up that element in reviewing this project. And as to, we're not taking a position on what we would like to see, you know, with regards to, you know, a footprint or massing and height. You know, we're leaving it obviously to DRB to resolve that issue. But it is our feeling that this proposal in its current form is just too massive for this site. It's, you know, it seems to us, unless, you know, something is able to be worked out here that's acceptable to the residents that'll be facing this. And remember, one important thing we keep hearing is people saying that, you know, their second floor bedrooms, which in all cases, master bedrooms are in the front of the houses, that they'll be looking directly into this structure and that they'll lose that, you know, the privacy. So that's something to always, you know, keep in mind. So anyway, you know, we're just, you know, going forward, you know, we're interested to see, you know, what the next proposal will look like. But it's important that I think, giving the square footage, the number of beds, that it's unlikely that something could be worked out here that would satisfy the residents of Wethersfield cluster, and also the, you know, the essential elements of Reston and other standards that the Reston Association has set. You know, as to the master plan, there was a general sense that everything south of Sunrise Valley would be more or less be kept status quo going forward. There's an allowance for some more density in village center areas, but you know, I don't think there was a sense that we would replicate what's going on the north side of Sunrise Valley on the south side of Sunrise Valley. So it may be that just this particular proposal is just too big for this site. Thanks.
Quick question for you. Do you have any specific ideas or things that strike you that if you could change it, you would? If we were to give them advice, is there something?
Yeah, well, my personal feeling in you know, the board in the resolution we passed, we were very clear that, you know, at least at this point, we weren't going to talk about alternatives. But, you know, speaking for myself, I think a smaller, lower facility, you know, so long as the architecture was sympathetic to its surroundings and so forth, that something like that could work. If somehow you could fit in a structure with this number of beds into the site that, you know, that works, you know, that would be fine too. I just don't know that it's possible given the constraints of the site. You know, perhaps, you know, they could, I don't know if there's a way to bring it even closer to the dental arts facility, maybe butt up right against it, you know, work something out with them so that, you know, they're literally right next to each other. That's just something that popped in my head just now. I don't know if that would work at all. But, you know, perhaps there are some other, you know, I think this is a good start tonight, by the way, and I think, you know, the questions that were asked by the board were very appropriate, and I see, you know, things moving in a good direction. But it's going to be hard. Somebody to use the expression of a square peg in a round hole, and that, you know, just, it may be, you know, it may be impossible to fill that hole with a square peg.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
There's someone else who would like to come up? Come on up. Thank you.
I'm Joe Layton at 2033 of Probst Lane, and I know some of you know me. But I just have one thing to add to Steve, is that they've asked for a variance on the parking, And I think when you get the design should represent what the actual parking requirement is now, and not what the parking requirement they want the county to approve of. And I think that's very important, because they might have to have more surface parking if the county doesn't approve the current proposal that they have made the application for. So that's important, because the county could turn them down on adding additional parking spaces. That's what I heard, is that they plan to add additional parking space, and that's the one additional comment I have to our president. Also, I will be seeing the building, and like I said, like you guys said, it's hard to know what it's going to look like when you don't see, the thing of the houses, of the townhomes, in relation to the buildings. So I just wanted to add the parking thing to the thing that you need to have, that when they submit their next drawings, they need to make sure that they cover the parking spots that the county currently requires.
Anyone else? Please go forward.
Linwood Patang at 2027 Approach Lane. I agree with everything that my neighbors have said. I just want to reiterate that if the elevation of the building has not gone down, has not been reduced at third level, they still have visibility inside of our townhomes, and our privacy will be compromised. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please come forward.
I'm part of Weathersfield cluster as well. So my wife and I moved in about 10 years ago. We looked at a lot of different places around Fairfax and ended up settling in Reston, particularly because we liked the feel. And I'm not an architect, so it was interesting hearing you guys talk. But I just know that my wife, and now I have a family that lives in the neighborhood. We like the structure that Reston provides. We like the green space. We like how the neighboring place that I go every weekend to get my hair cut with my kids, and I walk past the facility that's going to be removed for this facility. I like how all of that goes together. I don't know technically how to describe it, but I just know that that is what we, and I believe my neighbors appreciate and like. When we looked at the mock-ups a few weeks ago, we were just shocked that the thought of that going in for two reasons. One is the height. It's not going to affect me directly because I live on another street. But the thought of my neighbors having another building, we wouldn't have moved into the neighborhood if that was one of our houses originally. And in fact, knowing my wife, if we lived in one of those houses now, we would probably be moving if a building was built across from us, because we did turn down moving into other neighborhoods because of other people being able to see into our house. So I think it dramatically changes their experience of living in our neighborhood. And so I think if it was lowered, then that would be great. The second element has to do with the actual design. I just don't get it. To me, it doesn't fit in with anything else. The schematic or the drawing that we saw earlier today that was posted up, it reminds me of Fairfax when you're driving past. I think it's the Toll Brothers building, which is that big building that stands up. I don't get how that fits in, and I don't get how what was shown up there fits into anything around South Reston and even up in Northern Reston a little bit. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, please go forward. Just 1 minute, because we got to take a break before the full design review board. So.
Okay. So I'm Gene Morris. I submitted a letter and some photos to the DRB. My wife and I wrote up this letter. I'll just summarize it basically. Our house is on Approach Lane, which is in the cul-de-sac, the closest point to the daycare center. And based on the measurements that were provided for the Kensington project, the size and everything is just monstrous and overbearing compared to the townhouses there. It would block sunlight, or a nice view of the sunset and the airflow quality, I think, would diminish. I think everything about it is just degrades the property value of our community. And I think, as probably everyone else in our community has said, the property's density is just too big for the size of the lot that it's on, and it would just be overpowering for our space.
Okay, thank you. Quick question, what's the differential on this scheme, the height of the roof compared to the height of the lowest existing townhouse? Do you know that, by any chance?
It would be hazarding a guess, I can tell already. You're going to be hazarding a guess, I can tell already.
We had it in the earlier materials, we just didn't bring it with us. Maybe it's in here.
So I think understanding that's really
While you're looking for that, I just had one question. Is there a unit count threshold? I mean, you've held pretty much to that throughout. Is there a lower number that still makes this feasible for you guys to pursue? And if so, I mean, you don't have to answer this right now, but that could probably help all around if it could begin to finally shrink some of this structure farther back from the golf course or whatever might happen to do. I mean, what do you have, 100, how many units do you have now?
91.
91. I mean, does 70 work? Or you don't have to answer this right now. Does 60 work? I mean, you've held to that, and I understand why you're doing it as the developer, but if there's some way you can massage that and begin to drop the unit count, that might help.
And further reduce the massing.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, just, Richard, so I'm clear, is it square footage or is it units? Meaning,
Square footage.
Yeah, square footage, and it goes back to the
It looks
massing.
like you reduced unit size in this study to get it narrower. I don't know what you did, but it's less footprint, it's less width, it's somehow accomplished, and that's how it's able to get farther away. I just wanted to say that, again, these residential enclaves in Reston are oases. Once you move into them, they're surrounded by trees. They're separated from Sunrise Valley is a highway at certain times of the day. So all of Reston continues to change. And it's that essential quality, though, of being set apart once you're in that Weathersfield cluster that I'm trying to ensure is still felt. That when you drive up Approach Lane in particular, there's the sense of not being a part of that commercial center next door. It's convenient, it's there, you can walk to it, as the gentleman was just saying. So again, tree buffer, landscaping, this isn't just architecture, this is all of the tools in the kit to maintain the buffer between the residences and this property. Just so essential.
Yeah, one last comment. In future work sessions, it might be helpful to sort of have a few options in front of us to sort of get a feel for other ideas. Not necessarily for this project maybe, but as you're bringing other clients forward, looking at a few different ways and maybe giving us opportunities to look at different configurations would be helpful.
You could get 9 different choices if you worked at it.
Yeah, I know it's a lot of work, but our goal is to come up with a good design.
Part of it is that, like I said earlier, we used to do it around a conference table where we could pull it out and sketch it.
Yeah.
So I think part of it was anticipating we would pull it out and sketch it.
We can see what we can do about having a less formal arrangement.
Yeah.
So this was a section that was included early on that showed the scale relative to the townhouses. This is in the middle of the building, so where the grade differential is the greatest. With this latest footprint, the buildings are separated by a greater distance than this section does, but effectively you can see the relationship between them in terms of the height in the middle of the site. And so the roof line of the townhouses probably comes to the upper, I'll call it the underside of the pitched roof in this particular design. And then obviously, when you start to play with roof lines and other things, it'll change a little more it'll change more than this and obviously be set farther back, but that gives you some sense of proportion.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, that's going to be really important for the next meeting.
residential house, not village.
And then
Okay. Well, I think we need to wrap this up. Certainly appreciate everyone coming in and having a good discussion here. And we'll move on to the full review board and look forward to seeing what you have next. Thank you. We'll take a quick break and then we'll start the full board meeting. Okay, let this meeting come to order. May I please have a motion and a second to approve tonight's agenda?
Motion, so.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
May I please have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the last full design review board?
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, for all the audience, smaller group than normal, please silence your devices, refrain from making comments while someone else is speaking, and please take any conversations out into the hallway or lobby. If your comments concern an item on the agenda tonight, you will have an opportunity to speak during the review of the application. If you have comments on anything not related to an agenda item, please raise your hand, and when called upon, provide your name and Reston address, and then proceed with your comments. You may speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Are there any member comments this evening not related to an application? All right. Instructions for registered affected parties, which I believe we have some tonight. The time limit is 3 minutes per household. If you are the only member speaking for a recognized group, the time limit is 5 minutes. Please identify yourself, the group you represent, and provide your address before speaking. You may speak only one at a time. Our staff over here will let you know when your 3 minutes is running out, and when you do that, please be respectful and wrap up your conversation. Please do not repeat another speaker's comments. You can say that you agree. We certainly understand that, but don't restate what we've already heard. And please direct your comments to the Design Review Board and not to the applicant or the affected parties. Offensive or abusive comments will not be tolerated and will result in the immediate forfeiture of your remaining time and removal from the meeting. If you are not a registered affected party, we'll also give you an opportunity to speak, so please make sure you let me know, and then I'll call you up and give you an opportunity to speak. So let's review our agenda. Number 1, looks like you're all ready to go. Towns at Baldwin Grove. Please introduce yourselves and your address and tell us what you want to do.
So I'm Paige Bastian. I'm president of the Homeowners Association for Baldwin Grove, 1303 Sundial Drive.
Great, thank you.
Sean Inslee, I'm the treasurer. My address is 11400 Summerhouse Court.
Fred Bolander, vice president of the HOA, Baldwin Grove, 11443 Summerhouse Court.
Hi, Liz Aurelia, 11408 Summerhouse Court. I brought forth a complaint against Baldwin Grove.
Okay, thank you. Does someone want to sort of tell us a little bit about your application and what you're trying to do? I don't know who's
I'll defer to Elizabeth since she's the one that submitted the complaint.
Okay.
So where we are in the process of this complaint, which has been, the formal complaint was a year back. There was a review of some dimmed lighting. We had some cluster lighting, pedestrian lighting throughout Baldwin Grove, and that was too bright. It was non-compliant. It's unshielded. They were required to dim it, and they tried with some 70s. That failed. They were instructed, the cluster was instructed to install 45s. They installed 50s, and the Design Review Board was asked to go back out and review, take a visual inspection of the 50 watts. That's a synopsis of where we are.
What's your current feeling?
So I reviewed I guess I have a mic now. I reviewed the situation. There was a 50-watt lamp installed, and an unshielded fixture, and a 50-watt lamp installed, and a shielded fixture. So there's only one shielded fixture on the property that I know of. And my feeling is that the wattage should be 35 watts. Now remember, we're not talking about household incandescent A lamps. We're talking about metal, halogen, clear white, blue spectrum light, commercial lighting. It's completely unshielded. And my proposal would be that it's 35 watt if you're sticking with the product that they're using, that the lamp should be frosted, and that the lamps around my house, the street posts around my home, are shielded in accordance with Fairfax County ordinances.
Okay. I guess any response to?
Sure. So it started back, we had globes. They were frosted. You can't get the globes anymore. This was years gone by. DRB approved a clear globe with the stipulation that they could go back and reevaluate. A complaint was made regarding the lamps that we put in. So we went and there were 70s. The last time we were here, we put in, no, that was 70s last time. We put in 70s. DRB went out and looked at them and said, yeah, some people said it was still a little bit too bright. So we said, we'll put in the lowest wattage we can, right? I thought it was 45, but I also said in the meeting, I wasn't sure what it was. The meetings got recorded as 45. I contacted Reston and said, I know it was videotaped. Your recording or what you're noting is not correct. Will you please go look at the videotape and see what I said? I said the lowest amount. The lowest amount we can do with the ballast is 50. We installed it not one, but 2 places. 4 weeks after our meeting, so they've been installed since March 20th. So the purpose of the complaint is to address the wattage of the lamps, nothing more. The globes, that's a separate conversation if we're going to have that.
Have you received any other complaints?
There is another neighbor who's complained about it, and we have put in a shield for them. They have no, actually, they don't have a lamp in front of them. So yes, but we have.
One other comment.
Correct. But we have, what, 83?
87 units.
87 units. I've lived here 20 years. I've been on board for 6
Go ahead, Richard.
I just had a comment about this. I mean, this, as you say, has been going on for quite a while. I think I went out there last night. It's a very confusing cluster to try to, in the dark, read a map and so on. But anyway, I found the lights that we're talking about. Just down the street from good old number 19, there's one that still has about 1,000-watt fixture or light bulb in it. I'm kidding, of course, but it's very bright. It's down the street from there.
1,200.
Is that what it is? I mean, it's just
We were only required
dazzling.
to
But my point is that
install
when,
one.
you know, all lighting is sort of relative, and the numbers are neither, you know, okay, fine, 90, 100, 5, whatever it is, right? And I sat there for a while and looked at this, and the one that you have, number 19, has the 45 or 50 or whatever we think it is. It is just from an eyeball looking at the thing, it's about half as intense as the one that's down the street a little bit further. Personally, I thought it was acceptable. I don't know if going to 35 does you any good or not. It's all in how you look at things, okay? I thought a lot of the pole lamps in front of the houses were brighter than number 19. Or they just looking at it, gee, that looks bright. That doesn't look nearly as bright. So I think personally, I think whatever you got in there in number 19, I think takes care of the issue from my point of view that we've asked you guys to do, and you came from 90 to 70 to whatever. And I think, from my point of view, I think it's fine. In fact, it's less bright than your pole lamps. But we won't get into the pole lamps, so anyway.
Sure. I had a similar experience. I went out there last night. I found 19 very easily. I thought it was acceptable. I had trouble finding number 1 and figuring out which one that was. And in somewhere in that area, there was one that was much, much brighter. I don't think it was number 1, but if 19 is the model of what happens out there, I think it's a positive step.
Okay. Any other comments?
No comments.
I guess one question. You said you had shielded one of the lights from the other complaint, or the other address with the complaint.
What's it called? It goes on the top and flex the light down. So we put those in as homeowners might request. So it's not overall, Reston doesn't make us meet that compliant with all the lights. So if the homeowner requests, we try to accommodate that.
Would it be possible to add one next to her house, or have you already done that?
There is one across the street from her house. But the answer is yes.
Okay. I guess let's go around real quick. Ken, you want to start us off?
No, I think we're just focusing on the issue of the brightness, as I understand, and I think we've resolved that. I agree with Richard in terms of the wattage. I'm not concerned about what's on the box. If you've achieved what I think we set out to do, I think you've done what we've asked.
I concur with my colleagues.
I was out there the night before.
You were the one that couldn't.
We couldn't. I don't know why lights were out, but I did notice, even with the other lights, there's quite a variety of shades and brightness. But I cannot address that specifically, that because it wasn't on that.
They knew you were coming.
Apparently.
There were a lot of other lights out. 19 happened to be on, but then a bunch of its neighbors were
Right, so
not.
they're on photo sensors,
Okay.
right, so it all depends what time.
Yeah.
Sunset was at 8:16, you got to factor in time till it gets dark, certain ones that get different light.
I was there after 9:30 or somewhere in that time frame.
Yeah.
It was plenty dark
It was dark.
outside. I
It
would have
was dark.
expected those on, but
Any other comments?
no more than what I've said now.
Seems fine to me.
I'll just opine that this is the sort of thing that I think does matter in clusters in terms of the aesthetics, in terms of property values, in terms of cohesive feel. Baldwin Grove, I own one of the condos next door. To me, the whole complex, both the townhouses and the condos where I have a property are, traditional, very well done for what they are, architecture. And I'd hate to see the lighting become, like Bruce just described, sort of one color temperature there, one color temperature here, some shielded, some not shielded. I think uniformity does matter, and I would encourage you to certainly change everything to the 50 watt that we're saying sounds okay, looks okay. And I'd question whether or not every fixture ought to be shielded for uniformity's sake. I'm just saying, I'm not.
If you do it for Baldwin Grove, I'm okay, but do it for the rest of Reston.
Well, I thought this lighting presentation, not to get into Fairfax County, but when you make a change to the fixture, it's not grandfathered anymore, according to Fairfax County. And if you can see the light source, we can say fine here, but you may still get a complaint from Fairfax County.
Actually, I disagree, because I do have the ordinance here.
Glare, ability to see the fixture.
Well, I mean.
I don't need to debate it necessarily, because I'm not an expert, but.
I honestly don't think we need to get into that, because I think we're going to resolve the issue tonight.
You would be the ones getting into it, and it's a separate issue from what we're here for.
Yeah, it does say that changing lamps or lights is not a
Changing
change in
lamps.
the fixture, and that as long as,
But I don't think we're actually talking about that tonight.
You're right,
so.
you're right. The point is, and also, they've been around since 1995, so
Okay.
they're conforming with the ordinance.
So make sure you use the same lamps in all the fixtures.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve what we're approving, I guess, is the bulb that's going into your lights. So whatever's in number 19, and it's a 45 or a 50 watt bulb, that be uniformly distributed throughout your cluster as the bulb of choice.
Can you guys circle back around so I can make a second comment to everything that just happened here, please?
Yep, so that's a motion. Let's get the motion on the
What's your
table.
question? Any further comments? You want to make another comment?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
The comment that I would like to make is that I would like to use this forum to address the problem so that I don't have to come forth with another complaint to resolve the issue. We have everybody here at the table, so let's get it taken care of. The cluster has spoken to a lamp being shielded across the street from me. My house is affected by approximately 15 to 18 different light sources within the community of the 27 lampposts that are out there. It is within my right within Fairfax to have them shielded. This is the place to resolve it. They were instructed to put a lower wattage lamp in. They didn't follow the instruction for starters, so we're going a little higher. Admittedly, that is a massive improvement, but we're talking about a commercial grade fixed lamp source in a residential installation. So my house isn't being protected. This doesn't resolve my issue. My windows haven't been opened in 3 years because of light pollution streaming into my bedroom windows and into my house, and we're going to be walking away from this without the problem being solved. And so we need to motion, if you guys feel, if the design review believes that the 50 watt has made enough of a difference, then let's motion that it has to be shielded. those lamps aren't grandfathered. You can't increase the lighting and alter a light and then look to protect yourself under the law of a grandfather clause. You've altered the lamps. When you make an alteration, you have to bring them up to code. You don't take them from code and take them out of code and then say you have a grandfather clause. So their argument against that is flawed, and we're leaving the table without resolving the problem that was the source of my complaint that brought us here in the first place. Okay, I have 13 lights polluting my property. They need to be shielded. They need to be toned down. If you think that the 50 is significant, in spite of the fact that it's white halogen, we shouldn't even have light temperatures out there on that property in a residential setting in the first place, at least shield them. And once you shield them, that intensifies the light. That's why I'm saying 35 with the shield, and that solves the problem. Can you help me with that?
Well, just a question I
I
have.
think I get to respond to that. That was not the point of this meeting. We weren't called here to talk about shields. We were called here to talk about the lamp wattage. If we want to have a different discussion on that, let's do that. But let the board be prepared to see what the request is. You can't keep adding things. I'd love to talk about all different things. I can tell you about my day, but we didn't come here to talk about that.
Well, so the original decision to approve the lamps or the lights in the beginning, we reserved, the board reserved the right to address brightness and/or shielding. That was specifically in
But so that's the globe. Change the globe.
Correct.
3 year, yeah.
Right, but then we were called back in because once that was done, somebody said they were too bright.
A couple of years later, correct.
Right.
Yes.
It all starts with the globe. I mean, I know that's a done deal, but that's where it started.
Sure. But this meeting was about the wattage. That's why we were here last time. We installed one, wanted to see the lower one. We agreed to do the lowest one possible, right? And that's what we did, and that's what we came here to talk about. We didn't come here to talk about adding shields throughout the community, things like that. I mean, there's financial planning we need to do to make changes like this. And I don't think it's fair to add on things. You want us to come back, we'll come back. But don't add more things that we're not prepared to talk about.
I mean, it seems like everybody that saw it thought it was fine. So, I mean, it seems fine.
Just
But,
for
further comments?
clarification, it appears that in the previous decision to defer this on March 1st, there's a mention of the DRB encouraging shielding, that the lights are shielded, or frosted bulbs, which I understand the frosted bulbs haven't been there for years now. But have you considered shielding them?
No, because I don't recall getting that part of the, I'd have to go back and pull up the
March 1st.
the bill that we.
Okay. I think whatever the decision about shielding or not, I mean, I don't see why we couldn't continue to give ourselves that right, which we've always maintained, to address that. See what they look like when everything's been changed down to the 50s. And if there's still some isolated issues, then talk about it then. Nobody knows really what the effect it's going to have when these things are all relamped, right?
Mm-hmm.
We saw one out of a sea of them. It looked better.
Yeah.
But nobody, including you, nobody knows how good or bad it's going to be until it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really no different than the position we were in the very first time we approved it, right? That's why we reserve that ability to go back out and look.
Yeah.
Because there's really no way to do it off of paper.
I guess we could add to the motion I just made. We reserve the right to come back out and look at it again and see if there's something else we need to do. But I also agree with you. We're only here to talk about the bulbs. That's what we went to see. The bulbs looked okay. You know, if there are going to be further issues, then I would add that to my motion.
I do. One comment?
Please.
Yeah, with respect to the 50s, when the electrician came out, she's mentioned 35s. We would have to completely redo every single lamp to go to 35s.
Not true.
Well, our electrician has indicated that that's the case, and we put in the lowest possible wattage that we could, which is what is so. And with respect to the cost, we felt that we would go to the lowest possible wattage we could, and we would shield as necessary for those that were complaining. So your point's very well taken about the aesthetics of the community, and we're very well aware of that. And we're also cognizant of the cost, so we try to have balanced those two.
Seems like a reasonable request. I guess, quick question. Will, do you see any reason for us to do anything special here?
I just draw you to the design guidelines. Among the issues that you're entitled to, there we go. Among the issues that you're entitled to look at and address with regard to deciding the design appropriateness of the lighting includes whether the fixture incorporates solid vertical cap, refractive lenses, the option for side shields to control glare. So controlling glare is in your purview. The compatibility of the lighting, uniformity is something you're supposed to look at in terms of the property. When there are changes, the changes should be designed to keep a consistent look to the greatest extent possible. That's all within your purview. So going to bulb wattage is certainly something you can address. Going to shielding, if that's appropriate, something you can address. But I think that the goal would be for you to achieve or help the cluster achieve a appropriate aesthetic look that has an appropriate level of impact and protect the impact of the owners as you deem to be appropriate. And obviously they disagree as to which way that might be, but it's your call and you have pretty broad purview in making that call.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further comments?
I wanted for clarification, was the suggestion that the 50s be installed
Throughout.
throughout? Okay, that's what I wanted to understand.
So I just want to ask some clarification. So it was you requested last time that we'll replace them as they burn out. Unfortunately, they burn out a lot because it's going to cost us a lot to replace them all at once. Reston's an environmentally friendly place. We don't want to throw away good bulbs. I have nothing or lamps. I can't resell them. I can't recruit. We're just going to put them in trash.
I'm going to respond to that since you brought it up. They did a sweep through the community, installed 175s just recently to prolong this. The 50-watt lamps that they're specifying, the electrician provided a cut sheet of it. Comes in a frosted. The lamp itself can be frosted. I suggest that they use it.
So A, it's absolutely false. We did not go and do a big sweep of the neighborhood and install the brightest lights we could. Just not true. I'll pull the records from the electrician, Colt. Not true.
Can you add a frosted bulb instead
At
of
this point, how long are we going to take it? Everybody that's gone out and agreed says, okay, the 50 looks good. Let's see what it does to the community.
I think we're okay with what we've.
Okay.
I don't see a reason to change the.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
I'm sorry, can we read the motion back? Are we still reserving the right to add shields?
Yes, I added that to the motion.
Just wanted to make sure.
You didn't have the shields, we didn't have that.
Go ahead and restate your motion, please.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I think my motion is to approve the use of the 50-watt bulb or 45 or whichever it is uniformly throughout the cluster as the other lights burn out. I appreciate that. I think that's no reason to throw away a good bulb with the stipulation that we reserve the right after this is done to come take a look, and if we feel shielding is necessary, to require that.
I'm okay with that amendment.
Okay.
Will you tell us when that time is, or when there's a large area that's?
Absolutely.
And it's easier to come look at it in the daytime. So,
For Reston, they have a maximum of 6 months to complete any motion that you've come to terms with today.
well, if we're giving them the ability to only replace them when they burn out, I don't know if they're all going to burn out in 6 months or not.
I think we should put a 6-month limit on it personally, rather than let it spin out until God knows when. It's either something that needs to be corrected or it's not. We don't let things spin out for years, whatever they want.
It's not a year's kind of project.
I'm just saying, we put reasonable time limits on these sorts of things all the time.
Right, but I don't, sorry.
May I make a statement?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm Vice President. We have attempted to be very, very concerned about an individual and her concern. Now, my wife happens to love light. My wife doesn't want light to be intruded upon. There are a number of these lamps that are in trails. So how many do we have, 18? Of the 18, there's maybe 5 or 6 of them that are in trails that light up, darkened trails. So you have that. As Richard has observed, there's much more light with the individual carriage lamps. You've got 80-something of those, and there's 3 bulbs that go into that. So there's much more light created by that issue and stuff. So, we'll be accommodative, of course, whatever you view as reasonable. We've attempted to be reasonable.
It's not your property,
But-
Fred.
Okay.
Well, yours is impacted, and we can look at
All
that.
right, thank you. Just please address the board. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for bringing me back. But I would say that in fact we will attempt to be, we will be accommodative based upon your observations.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, and I have to say, I disagree with Neil. I think I would hesitate to ask them to tear out all the bulbs that are, they'd probably just put in a
Just
little while
asking
ago.
for a reasonable outside limit. I'm not saying it has to all be done tomorrow. I'm saying that the board has staff that has to follow up on this, and we're giving them no deadline whatsoever. We typically place deadlines on decisions. That's all I'm saying. I don't know what that reasonable deadline is, but I think there should be one.
Year and a half. They'll probably go before that year and a half. They typically
No way.
How about this? How about in a year, we'll put a year, you come back and report how many you've replaced. We'll go back out and look and readdress it and see if there's an issue or not. Is that fair?
Yeah.
And you tell us specifically which ones have been replaced and which ones haven't.
I have a statement from the Covenant's advisor saying that any plan that is implemented here, they have 6 months to implement it. She said that they're blowing
Unless
out
we
all
add a
the time.
stipulation.
They're saying that they blow out all the time. We're spending thousands and thousands of dollars a year on fixtures, fixing the fixtures out there, Colba's out there all the time. 6 months is reasonable. I've been living with this long enough.
Okay, I think we've got the point. Thank you very much. Any changes to your motion?
I think I'd add a time limit of 1 year.
Okay, are you okay with that, Ken?
Absolutely.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion passes. Thank you very much. All right, next agenda item, 11572 Lake Newport Road. Please come forward.
Thanks. Forgot all the rules about what I'm supposed to say, but I think it's that I'm Phyllis
Please.
Horn, and I own 11572 Lake Newport.
Perfect, well done.
Did I do okay? Thanks. And, let's see, I'm appealing a decision based on what I think is a misapplication of the design standards to a retaining wall on my property.
To a retaining wall on your property?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
That is the retaining wall on my property. It has, I read the standards before I bought the house, and it said that the stones needed to be, various sizes, rusticated, couldn't be white, needed to be stepped with the grade of the land, needed to be natural colors, and that wall meets that. Now, in the letter, I'm sorry. So I have to wait for you guys to tell me that you're going to hear the appeal, or do I?
Well, basically, you need to present data that would lead us to believe there is a misapplication of the design guidelines. So if it's in relation to that,
Can I just ask a question? Is this a result of a panel?
yes. And Neil and Grace need to abstain from any votes.
All right. Thank you.
So the letter that I received did not mention what the board members cited as the as the thing that was wrong with it. They cited the horizontal lines of the stones. In the letter, it just said that they disapproved it
because it didn't meet the manufactured block system should have a natural look, random pattern that ranges in size and color and rusticated appearance that mimics natural stone. That it wouldn't have been approved had it been had an application been submitted before it was built. I did not. There may have been. The board may have had a date. Bless your heart. The board may have had a date for when that wall was built, but I don't know when it was built, and I don't know what the standards were when it was built. But I know that it, as the standards were described, it met it, as far as I could tell, when I bought it. So.
Sorry, that wall was there when you bought the property?
Yes, it was.
And it was cited.
Yes, it was.
But you
right.
thought you could get it approved.
I was hopeful. I was under the impression, and I've been in Reston a long time, and I've been, presented things to the board a lot of times, and I was under the impression that because the previous owners had gave you guys a list this long of stuff they'd done to this property that they had never submitted a single application on, that it was administratively reviewed because they didn't present it until there was we had a ratified offer on the property, or an offer on the property, that that somehow there was just a mistake, because it clearly meets the requirements. And so in the appeal package, what I also have is 8 other properties that have very similar stone. The horizontal lines that that the board cited as the problem with the design are apparent in all the other pictures that are in the package that go with it, including the house right across the street from me, which the board approved on March 4th, just a few weeks ago.
Can I just jump in for a second here? Are all the samples or examples she put in have all been approved? Question mark?
Yeah, they're noted on the photos themselves.
Okay, then I suggest that. Okay, then I suggest that would be the new information that would allow us to hear this, and I would make a motion to grant the appeal so we can hear the case.
I would second
application.
All in favor?
I would say that we had a lot of that information at the original meeting, but you're welcome to hear the appeal.
Aye. Any comment?
Aye.
Okay, I guess we'll hear the appeal.
I think it's just the photographs you're looking at.
I was going to say I can tell you what I just said, but I think that's that's the information that I have. That I pulled the design guidelines, I read them, I looked at the stone. I went to see Trevor Wright. I asked for others that had been approved similar to it. It seemed to me to meet it, so I came to ask for the approval because, of course, I'm a good Restonian and I want all my stuff to be approved. 3 things that occurred during the meeting that surprised me were that the board referenced that it didn't meet some what I would call emerging guidelines that were being circulated throughout Reston. You mentioned some that were being circulated, but they hadn't been published yet. So
I think you're putting words in my mouth.
Well, I respectfully disagree.
We said that uniform modular concrete block is discouraged in the design guidelines, and that's true. We also said that you can find incidences where it is installed, not all of which are approved, and some of which have some less uniformity. We said using the standard of would we have approved this had it been submitted in an application for new construction, it was our opinion that this would not have been approved. We also noted that you had bought the house knowing that it was disapproved, and that you were hoping you could come in and be persuasive. We disagreed that this was not anything different than uniform modular concrete blocks that the design guidelines do not allow, and that we would not have approved it had it been applied before it was installed. And we had a unanimous vote. All 3 of us voted against it.
And just to quote the current design guidelines, it says manufactured block systems are generally not suitable for residential use. The DRB will carefully review the color, size, and proportion of the proposed blocks to determine their appropriateness. We are considering new design guidelines that would be more specific to specifically exclude manufactured block systems completely, that are of the same size and color. So that is not official yet. And so currently its manufactured block systems are generally not suitable for residential use.
Which is why it was cited in the poem.
That's right.
Well, I don't, the one thing that I don't have in the package is the design guidelines, both sections of it, because I read both sections of it. It says that you can use it as long as they aren't the same size. So if you look at the pictures of the property, the wall on my property, the stones vary in size. There are some that are small and square. There are some that are this length rectangular, some that are longer. There's some that are slightly curved and some that are not. It's just like so it may be discouraged, but it says you can use it as long as they're not the same size and as long as they're not white and they rusticated. It's rusticated. It has a rough surface, so it looks rusticated. It's the right color. And I can't even speak intelligently about whether it would have been approved had an application been submitted because I don't know when the wall was built and I don't know what the published guidelines were at the time that the wall was built. But the fact that the board approved a wall right across the street this past March 4th, which was about 6 or 8 months after mine was disapproved, that is very similar to this one. The only difference is the color of the stone and two of my neighbors, actually at 11571, and yep, that's right across the street from me, and
That's certainly new information.
11569.
That wasn't there when we were.
I'm sorry?
I would agree that that's new information. We didn't see that wall when you were in front of our panel. I think that has a little more uniformity. Obviously, this is really getting into shades of gray.
Yes, theirs is more uniform than mine.
No, slightly less uniformity, in my opinion. I see some very long pieces that I don't think your wall has.
Well, if you look at the part that goes along the driveway, there might be some longer pieces there, but the point is they're not uniform. And, you know, I love Reston. I love uniformity. I grew up way out in the country where people have washing machines in their front yard that rust, so that's why I love to live here. But I just felt like this
when you
was
have a couch that you have a problem.
sometimes, but I just felt like it's a beautiful wall, and when it gets replaced, which it will one of these days, because I see that little crack over there. I got to fix that. I think it's going to need to be replaced in a number of years. And when you have new guidelines that are published and you outlaw manufactured stone altogether, I think it should be replaced. But I think for now it meets the guidelines that were published when I came to see you guys. And that there are 8 other properties that have similar stone that meet the same guidelines that have been approved by the board. And I just hope I don't have to spend $15,000 taking it down and replacing it.
11569 Lake Newport Road.
I will say that it does.
The brown one.
It does. The blocks that they used are
that one. Yeah.
Much better than what you would typically find at, say, Home Depot. The sort of real standard, one size, one color.
Yeah, see the difference.
Those are all the same size on that one.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to look at that one.
Mm-hmm. That one is
That
totally
one
uniform.
bothers me, quite honestly. All the blocks are uniform, not to mention the color is astronomically bad. But
it was a 2007 POA on that, just to note.
Yeah, I understand. But given the one that's directly across the street at 571, it's a little more adobe looking, or the color's what it is. But I think next to the gray driveway, I don't have a problem with what's there. I gather it's been there for years, and not that makes it better or worse. I guess there's another one that got approved. This one.
That's mine.
Oh, is that yours?
And it has.
But you got a lot of bushes now. This was before the bushes.
Well, there's some plants growing up in front of it. I'd be even delighted to plant some bushes in front of it to hide a little more if you think that would look better.
This looks so
we talked
here.
about that.
Ken, you want to do something?
I certainly respect what the panel went through, but I think in this instance, looking at the number of other approved items, it would be hard for me, the layperson, to differentiate this one, especially in the time frame that it was built under guidelines that might have been different for that homeowner. So If you're asking my opinion, I would approve this.
Okay, I'll skip you, Grace, if you don't mind. Or
She has
I guess do you have any,
anything
are they allowed to comment?
Yes.
You're allowed to comment, sure.
Okay, comment, please. Just can't vote, right?
Hey.
No voting.
I would say that the additional information on previously approved manufactured blocks, although I'll comment that being that that was several years ago, back in 2007, I see that there was one there that would bother me about approving. I still don't see the variation in yours versus the one that was approved in March. I feel that one, there was more variation and difference in the size of the blocks. So, but if there are several that have been approved like this, it would be hard to not approve that one, but I'm not gonna, there's some inconsistency, I would agree, on the approval from the previous times.
I agree that as compared to some of the pictures, there's not as much variance, but there is variance, and I tend to approve it under these circumstances.
Okay. Richard?
I've said what I had to say.
Grant?
Yeah, I don't think it's as good as the one across the street, but it's certainly better than even some of the other examples that have been provided here. And I do see the variation, not just in the coloring, but in the sizes of the stones. I don't have an issue with it.
Okay. I would agree with what has been said. Any other comments?
Well, you know, we enjoyed her when she was in front of our panel because you're a delightful person, and
Thank you so
you just bought in Reston, and you know it's a long-standing issue when people do things that we don't like without approval. That the one chance we have then to rectify the situation is when the property is sold. Our panel, I know, felt like we were upholding what I felt I personally have done many, many times in the past, which was to disapprove a uniform modular block wall. That if it had been in front of us as a new application, we would have encouraged you to use something with more random pattern to it. So when this board now looks like it's heading towards approving this, I think the board certainly has more work to do to more clearly define when this thing gets to the point that it's not uniformly modular, which we don't like the look of. Personally, I think this is all very subjective. I think the three persons on our panel, as well as the staff that cited it in the POA, were perfectly logical in their thinking, and we're just sort of getting a second opinion here. So I disagree in a lot of ways that we're really doing anything more than just changing our minds right now. I don't think there's substantive new. I think we understood the issues well at the time of the application in the first place, as did staff.
Okay. Any further comments, motions?
I move to approve the application, if that's the appropriate words, given this is an appeal, so I'm not sure. But I would put on the floor that we allow this to be overturned.
Can I add a stipulation?
Be very specific about why we're overturning it.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, we could probably add some language about why. But I think I do like the idea of adding some landscaping to the front of the wall to further shield that a little bit, soften it a bit right in front. Are you okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
And you said you'd be okay with that. So do you want to specify why we're overturning it, in your opinion?
I'll try to help with the words. Given the information provided in this evening's presentation, specifically other approved properties with similar stone and layouts. And feel free to edit that.
I would throw in natural appearance, which is something that we did discuss when you were in front of us. It's got good color relative to some of these things. So.
Okay, a good point, thank you. This is my first motion, guys.
My first appeal, I know.
I like Dale's words. I think that's appropriate, yes. And there is variation in the stone, it's not.
There is
they're not
variation.
all the same size.
There is, yeah, it's
In the color.
in the color.
in the
yeah.
color, yes.
I would
Thank
agree.
you for tying in the specifics, I appreciate that.
And we are working on clarifying the design guidelines for the future, so that'll help clarify things.
Yeah, outside of the motion, I think this is an area that we need to dig into.
Yeah. I'll second your motion.
Thank you.
Your first motion. Any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Woo-hoo, I got my first one in.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you all.
All right, 11011 Ring Road. Please come forward. Hello again. Good evening. Please state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Gorbani, 11011 Ring Road, Reston, VA.
Hi, I'm John Gorbani. Same address.
Great. I know we've talked to you a few times now, and want to tell us what you've adjusted since last time and what you responded to.
Absolutely. So
thank you for all the work you've done on this.
Oh,
by the way.
absolutely, no problem. It's actually, we were just talking, it looks a lot better. So we're actually a little bit happy that we kind of did this, so it's pretty nice.
If you'd brought your wife to the last meeting.
It would have been easier.
I was out of town for work.
You should have seen the text message I was
I
getting.
was sending a lot.
Yeah, she was.
I just had a question. I've got, what, 4 different versions?
Yeah, so our...
Let me ask my question.
Sorry.
Could you prioritize those for us? Like, what's number 1 to you, number 2 to you, number 3 to you?
Absolutely.
Which one is your
so there's
favorite?
one, yeah, the favorite one is, well, I'm actually going to let her talk.
I don't have the, go ahead.
All right, so the favorite one is the one without the, there goes the screen.
Oh,
Okay.
it's disappearing.
Okay, okay, there we go. There's one without the bay windows, with the arch and banners going across it, right there. That's my favorite one.
And what did you say going across?
Banners.
Bands.
Bands, brick bands.
Sorry, bands.
Oh.
Ooh, that's too bad.
Can we hear what your second favorite is?
Spell wrong again.
And number 2?
Option 2.
Option 2, can you go back? I have to see which order that
So
she
which
has.
one was that? That was option 4?
What's this one?
The last one.
3?
There's one with, no, go down a little bit, right there. Either with the,
The double bay
yeah.
with the gable
with the
end.
windows, yeah.
That's number 2.
I'll tell you why I like option 2, but I could go with any of these at this point.
Oh, okay.
I like option 2 because the bay windows do add a little additional detail, but by only doing them on the lower floor, it doesn't look as commercial as we said it did last time.
Yeah.
So for my eye, option 2 has just the right amount of everything. A little bit of flair with the box windows, but not too much. And it has the banding that we asked you to look at and things like that.
Right. That one. That's the one you're talking about?
That's the one I'm talking
That's
about.
not the, you were talking about the one with the bay goes all the way up?
Yes.
His number 2 was the double bays.
Yes.
Is this your number 3?
That would be my number 3.
Okay.
The last one is without the actual
No
roof
pediments,
setting
no roof.
on the
Okay.
top.
All right, so we're going to get rid of 4. 4 just went away.
Yeah, 4 is
Or whatever number you're calling it.
Because it responds to what we said last time.
correct.
I like this one too, personally.
Okay.
Hey,
But, yeah.
anything else you want to?
We did everything, we added the stone at the bottom. I hope that's okay. I just want to make sure everything's clear. We added the stones, we did the bands, and basically we tried to do the best to incorporate what you said last time.
Okay, I think it gets down to the, what number I can't.
Either
see
the
the
bay
numbers
windows
here.
going all the way up or
I think
halfway.
option 3, I would object to because I don't like just the
flat.
brick with nothing. And your option
Right there.
1A I mean, in my mind, it gets down to your option 2 or your option 1, which is the double bay or the single bay.
Give them
That
one.
one or the one that just has 1 bay on it. Neil, you said you like the one with the single bay?
I also said I'm happy with either of those, so whichever the applicant really wants. I'm
Sorry,
happy
which
with.
ones are you down to? 2?
These two.
and Option
They're
2?
They're
and
2 and number 1, these two.
If it was my house, I
The
like
one with
just
the 2 bays, right? Or the one, both of them with bays?
Are there affected parties on this one? Are there affected parties?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we hear from the affected parties real quick, and then we can go around. Affected parties, please come forward. You can have a seat, or you can step up to the podium, your choice. Please state your name and address.
Kathy Boyle from 11009 next door to them, and I agree with their first choice. I love it.
Great, thank you. Any other comments?
I just have a bit to read because I can't get things straight when I have a lot to be patient. My name is John Lamoureux. I'm here on behalf of my wife, myself, my 2 kids.
What's your address?
We live at 11013 Ring Road. That's lot 26 on the sort of layout there. And I appreciate being able to put my concerns forward. I don't have architectural concerns. These, I do like these better, but that's the reason we're concerned is the same reasons we've brought up in the past, which has to do with the trees. Like many others in Reston, my family and I appreciate old trees. It's the major reason we chose to live here. In the past, when I've come, you all have, mentioned that you have a commitment to preserving trees whenever possible in our community, and I appreciate that. In this instance, there are a few trees that the driveway would take out that are in good condition by the arborist, and we think they're wonderful trees. And we'd like to have the driveway moved several feet, which would also alleviate concerns that we have about the 2 driveways coming together at the bottom. Ours is quite steep. Anyway, that is my major, comment. To do that, I know afterwards, Mr. Gobani and I and a few others talked about this afterward, and it's, I know, late and hard to jigger around a driveway, but it's something that to do, you would have to get an easement apparently from the neighbor from from Kathy and
I'd be okay with it.
Yeah, so they said they were willing to it. I know it's late to attain, but this has been years in the making, and the plans for the landscaping, the neighbors and us, we saw for the first time at the first hearing 3 months ago. It was drawn up, those plans had been drawn up a long time ago. I mean, I think in 2014, but they're early enough that it lists the Chens, who are the previous owners, and we've lived in our house. In July, we'll live there 5 years. It's the only house my kids know, and I know they've been working on it and working hard, and I do like the design, I really do. It just, if there was a way to keep the trees and, move the driveway, I would be really appreciative. Thank you.
Kathy Boyle again. I'd like to comment on the driveway and the easement. It only involves about 2 feet worth of our property, and I really don't care. I would be happy to sign an easement.
Okay. Thank you.
So my name is Satish Srigunam. I'm just opposite to the house. I'm good with option 1. I have no.
Great, thank you. Any responses to any of those?
Yeah, I appreciate this concern. Trust me, when we originally did have the garage on the right side, it just wasn't going to go through the county based on the civil engineer and the grading plans. You can imagine that size the side with all the grading issues. So after this, yeah, I've gone through many plans, that's true. And this is what was drawn by their professional opinions in regards to what we can do. On the other side, if I do put the garage where Kathy's home is, I would actually, then those trees she's concerned about would become even more an issue. On that side, there are more healthy trees to cut down than the left side. That's where that hill is, where she's concerned that that's why we brought the actual fencing in, just to save those trees, which I think there's at least 5 or 6, 7 trees on that hill already. So either side of the house, if we put the garage, it would have been a dilemma for trees. But the drawings themselves, engineering and also getting an easement was even more difficult on the right side. So I did put plenty of thought and plan into that, and this is what our civil engineer recommended.
May I comment? We weren't thinking of you reversing the garage. That's huge. We were just thinking of moving the driveway toward the middle of your yard a few feet. That's what John and I were talking about. In other words, I can't see it.
Can you, I guess I don't think we understand what you're suggesting. Can you maybe go up here and point? Can you zoom in a little bit? Margo, can you guys zoom in at all?
So, instead of having the driveway come right here, if you could do it over just this way a little bit, like 3 or 4 feet is what John calculated. So it would come out over here, and then that crosses about 2 feet where it goes to my pocket. But don't reverse the driveway. Change the house and bring the driveway up.
Yeah, what's the
point? I don't know which. So the trees that get taken out are there's one that's like right on the edge. And there's a couple like here, and so I think they're just impacted because of the being covered up the roots and stuff being so close to it. So I don't know how far you have to move it to make trees close by. Because I also understand you got a little house and all, but it doesn't seem like you would have to go to the other side. And it does seem like it would make that drive safer spot because this comes right in where our driveway is like right here.
So your 2 driveways would join at the base.
Right. That's my understanding. I'm not supposed to talk to
No,
it's okay.
So are you, they're looking at a landscaping plan, and in that area that you're pointing at, there is planned trees to go back in. Are you saying despite that plan?
So, no, I'm not objecting to it. I'm just saying I'm okay with them building the house the way it is. John is objecting to having the trees go. And I'm saying that if they were willing to move the driveway 2 feet, if that was possible, I'd be happy to give them the easement.
No, I'm asking, do you understand that there are trees planned to go back in that very same spot? And you're saying despite that, you think it's insufficient?
They're small trees and they take a long time to be like the trees that are there now.
Right. So I'm not objecting to this house at all. I'm just trying to support John's point that if the driveway could move a few feet, it might solve his dilemma.
I just have one question. If you move the driveway up, is it going to cut into that rather severe topography there and cause the need for a retaining wall of some sort?
No, probably it's going to tighten that area for grading.
Sorry,
It's a pretty tight area.
Yeah.
If you were to shift that driveway over.
Yeah.
I think we could probably, if we get around to it, make a motion that allows them to shift the driveway a little bit to accommodate the trees that are there.
A couple feet, yeah.
Well, leave it up to you guys.
Right.
You know, that I don't think, so you take out as few trees as possible and see if you can make it work.
That sounds like a good solution.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, I was going to say, Richard, too, even despite, they have specific limits of clearance, the more trees you can save during the process, the better for you and for your neighbors, and so...
No, I addressed that. I said if we can do anything, I mean, this is all on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
When construction starts, it's going to be a whole
That's what
different
I'm
ball game. If let's say the roots are 10 feet across and we hit them while we're 10 feet across, at that point the tree's still going to be affected. So I don't know exactly how big and how what's going to happen during construction, but I will mark those trees personally that they're concerned about, and make sure that if we can move over 1 feet and it doesn't affect any plan changes with the county or have me do anything else, I'd be more than happy to.
Neil, do you have any comments?
No, I think it's great.
Okay.
Thank you for all the work.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thanks for getting to know us really well.
I'll be back for landscape. No,
Please.
I don't have anything additional. Do we all agree on an option?
I'm going to make a motion.
Okay.
We get to that. If you disagree, you don't have to vote for it. That's easy.
All right, we start talking. You go.
Any comments, Richard?
Or you guys have it? No, I'll make a motion when we get around to it.
Grace, anything?
No, I don't have any additional comments.
Ken? anything
I look
else?
forward to hearing the motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
Great.
I think that this encompasses all the things that keep getting listed on the letters. Okay, so I'm not going to put all of that in. I'll make a motion to approve the construction of this new house with option 1, with the double-story bay, the one that's on the screen right now.
No, not that.
Right? No, I'm sorry.
With-
Your option number 1, it's got the pediments on it.
Dependence on it.
Let's make sure we're all looking at the right one.
Right there.
There you go, that one, okay? And I believe they do call that their option 1, with some leniency in the location of the driveway. So the driveway gets placed so as to disturb as few trees as possible.
Absolutely.
And then all the rest of the stuff that was in that lengthy list of whatever.
Second.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Good job.
Thank you very much. Good luck.
Oh, the work's just started. Thank you, guys.
Thank
You're welcome. Mr. Butler, I believe you're up.
Not really me, fortunately. So I am staff liaison with the Pedestrian Lighting Working Group. We've got some members here tonight. We're going to present an update or a status
Hey, we know
report
you.
for you. Bill Burke, Bill Burton, Rick Landers, and Tony Watkins, who are also members. And I'm going to turn it over to them. I'm going to go sit back there.
Oh.
This is their show. Isn't that great?
Thank you, Larry. Well done. Please tell us who you are, your addresses, and then tell us what
I'm a little hoarse, so I'm here for display purposes mostly. My name's Rick Landers. I'm at 2442 Brussels Court. You've been there, so have you.
I've been there.
Bill Burton, 2034 Golf Course Drive.
Tony Watkins, 1419 Alden Hamlin.
Elizabeth Aurelia, 11408 Summerhouse Court.
Great, thank you.
Well, I'll start us off here. Is that good? You guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, so we basically got tasked with a working group on pedestrian lighting. We have a large number of, I mean, you guys know all the stuff that's coming in, so I'll kind of save you on that part. So what we tried to go about doing was working on a tool for Reston Association to deal with the lighting concerns of all residents. And so what we did was we had a charter from the board that basically said to conduct a feasibility study, develop some application guidelines and prioritization of pedestrian lighting in the community, really taking into account those common areas, pathways, clusters, and so forth. So with that, you kind of got our addresses and stuff there. But I wanted to just introduce some of our members and give a little bit more about each one, so you know which sides of the kind of spectrum we come from here. So I'm Tony Watkins, co-chair. If you saw my bike in the background there, that's how I came here. I commute as well as recreationally cycle. But, you know, I carry a light with me that way, so I'm not about necessarily lighting every pathway so I can ride late at night there. Rick can't really speak. If you want to, he's got laryngitis.
I'm with the Multimodal Transportation Advisory Committee, and I'm on the board of the WNOD Trail. And so I'm familiar with the lighting and the trails, et cetera. And I was kind of solicited to join the group, so I did.
I'm an architectural designer, and I have a specialty in environmental design. I'm the lead app. So that's how I ended up with this appointment.
I was on the previous, we had a lighting task force about 15 years ago. I was on that, helped the county get through their lighting guidelines, and avid trail user and amateur astronomer.
So you can kind of see where we got started there, and what we tried to do was come up with a framework to promote safety, conserve energy, taking into account our neighbors, and just the Reston Association kind of mantras, so to speak, looking at the environmental impacts and some of the health items. And obviously, judging by who's here, who's spoken before, you can kind of feel like where we tried to hash out a lot of these arguments before getting in front of you, so to speak, there. So, and what we did was create a lighting zone structure specific to Reston, based on some things that I'll get into. But we talked about land use, existing conditions, studied kind of the corridors and of transportation and intersections, and then really got down to it and tried to put some maps together. This has not been an easy process because everybody has their opinions on lighting. And it was a great precursor to that, so I'll just address the elephant in the room there. But obviously, that's what's going to happen as more and more things come in. So you can see where the board kind of was getting ahead of this, and what we are is just people that are trying to give you guys, the board, a tool to start with, and hopefully you'll see our work by the end of this. So these are some zone explanations, and I believe everybody will have access to this presentation afterwards, so I won't read each one there. I'll save you that and move us through. But basically it goes from high to low. If I had to kind of put one to it, you know, this is, how do I say this? There's the natural nature zones, and I'll just use one area when I always kind of bring it up is you got the glade, and people. Don't forget this is not our zones. Yeah, and this is the previous zones that we went off of to then drive a Reston zone. So you can kind of see which one, how we got to that. So we didn't just come up with this on our own of just this was, you know, hey, we pulled this out of thin air. This had some basis from these organizations. So when I moved through here, we actually went out and did some field work, and that's where I'm going to turn this over to Bill, who did a lot of field work on the south side of the Reston area. What we did was walking, biking, also trying to deal with some of the transportation projects that are coming in, looking at pathways that we think people are going to ask for lighting, and hopefully come up with at least a framework to go with. So we noted areas of high, low, medium, and created an overlay. Bill happens to be a map expert, so I'm going to turn it over to him and let him go now.
Is there a pointer on this?
Doesn't work on the LCD.
Okay. Do you mind if I stand up there and point?
What?
Okay. So we started with, Reston's got a pretty good GIS system. We've got the map in GIS, which is a digital database. So go ahead with the next slide. And we have on that map.
You have it. You want me to hold it and do it for you?
All right. So this is kind of a scrunched version, but we took the existing digital database of Reston, and that includes the boundaries. Actually, the street is pulled from the internet, from an Esri database. But we have RA open areas, we have RA paths, and as I said, the streets are on there. And so we laid all that on there, and then Tony and I went out and did the field work. And we have our own zone definitions, so I'll get into a second, but you can see we have a legend on the map, zone definitions, corridor definitions, and then all those different zones on here, which you can't hope to read up here, but Tony's going to put in your Dropbox a copy of the map, or sorry, Larry is. So these are our zones, and I'm not going to go through them. We took an existing concept of lighting zones from the International Dark Sky Association and the Illuminating Engineering Society. And we split out 4 zones. The first one, no lights. That's all the natural areas like the glade and so on. LZ1, residential areas that are pretty dark to begin with. They may have some commuting pathways to go through it. They may have paths that people aren't comfortable on right now walking their dog at night and so on. But there isn't a whole lot of existing light there. Number 2, zone 2 is closer to the commercial centers. There's a lot more existing light. There may be more foot traffic going to and from, the village centers. And zone 3 are the well-developed commercial centers. And again, you can read this later on your own what these mean. But so that's our breakdown of zones, and then corridors. Important travel corridor for bikes and pedestrians, and lesser ones. And the important ones are green on the map, and the lesser ones are yellow. So I would just want to point out a few local areas, show you what the map is like. So on the map, you got all these data, the zones. Here's zone 0, which includes, wooded areas, lakes. Any open area would be zone 0. We don't want new light shining on that. Zone 2 is fairly high density residential. And these green dots on here are existing pathway lights. And you can see they're pretty close together, okay? So it's pretty closely spaced. So overall, this would be a mixture of zone 2 and zone 3 in here. And we didn't do any field work in this area because it's already well developed. There's probably no further lighting needed. Whereas in South Reston, and this is where I did my field work, I walked all the RA paths at night. So I wanted to note not only existing official RA paths, I wanted to see what the ambient lighting was from adjacent clusters. The blue lights in here are lights that spill onto the paths from adjacent clusters. The red lights are ones that I asked myself, if I wanted this path reasonably well lit, not overlit, but area where people might use a lot of it, where would I put a light? So I positioned the red dots in there. Notice that the spacing of my red dots is a lot less, or a lot more than the green light dots you saw on the previous map. So I did this as an exercise because we feel that the committee has to be prepared for all sorts of things. There may be a high demand for pathway lights out there. There may be a demand for no pathway lights. We got to be prepared for things in between. This would not be something that the public would see if we had a public hearing on this. This is something we would keep in our back pocket. If an issue came up here, and there was really a consensus that more lights would be in, this is one proposed plan. We realize that's not our role, but I wanted to do it anyways, just as an exercise, because you or a consultant would obviously do that. I also have on here notes of areas with poor lighting. So here's a cluster with glare. Here's another one. There's actually really good low bollard lights over here next to Lake Thoreau. So I noted both the good and the bad. Again, going into the future, a lot of these lighting systems will have to be replaced. We want to be prepared with good lighting. I ran into someone at this cluster here that they're going through a revamping of their whole lighting system, which is really terrible cluster lighting. So that's kind of the middle of South Reston, and then very South Reston, same thing. It's all zone 1 and zone 0. And just to point out this here, I'll call this the appendix. Here's a very long path behind houses, totally dark. I went through the exercise. If I personally were in charge of lighting, where would be good places to put pathway lights? And so I put those in. Now, what do the people around here think about that? What is their reaction? Are they scared to walk it at night? Do they love it because they can go out and see the stars? We don't know. Or I don't know. Maybe you've gotten input. But in any case, I think ultimately it would be probably dependent on what what the public wants. So if we have a public hearing and a whole group of, homeowners come up and say, we need more lights here, this would be one scenario. So again, that would not be on a public map to begin with. This is strictly my field sheet. You would see all this stuff, but the only lights that'll be shown on the thing we show to the public are the existing RA pathway lights, the green dots. And I think that's it for me, and Liz is next.
One thing, I just want to add one thing. We're trying to get the database of streetlights from VDOT. If they're upgrading their GIS system, we want to put that on our base GIS layer as well, so that there's not redundancy of roadside pathway lights.
You're going to get in trouble, Sean. You got
I wanna-
I was speaking loudly. I'm done.
I want to add on to that because I may forget later, but, certainly this, as we see more and more sidewalks added in Reston along the roads, people aren't using the trails at night because they're using the road systems more and more. And, sometimes that's maybe something we want to encourage so that the trails remain more natural.
And
So I think
as a cyclist and stuff, and you look in North Reston as the place where I did that, that was something we really took into account. And as a guy that goes up Reston Avenue, you have a bunch of light also coming from the cars. It's hard to see back and forth. But I also have dogs, and I love the place being dark that way. I don't necessarily think safety equals lights. That's why I was joking with my light here. So I think you can find a balance between it, and that's kind of what Liz is going to talk about here a little bit. And then we'll sort of open it up to questions, answers. We got this printed out if maybe you think it's easier to see that way. I know this is pretty possible. So.
Right, exactly. We did a presentation to the environmental committee a week or two ago, and they pointed out to us that we're not discussing how we're going to protect the region from our community from light pollution in our presentation, although that comes up in our discussions all the time. So these next few slides, where we're talking about light placement and light zones, where you can customize the intensity of light in a zone, and we're supposed to be providing some sort of guidance for you on that. This is more with respect to lighting application, and to move forward with any kind of a pedestrian lighting plan, we really have to start to take into account Reston's core values. This language was taken from the Street Lighting Master Plan designed for Reston by Fairfax of 1983. Lighting technology has changed, but our values have not. So this is still, relevant and important, bringing the natural world and the man-made world together in harmony, selecting the right fixture, the type of fixture, the intensity of the light, and the location of the light. Those things are interdependent, and it has to be thought through from the beginning as we work through this process to help develop a pedestrian lighting plan. The appropriate fixture and lamp is critical in the full implementation of a lighting plan. So that to get a holistic approach to a pedestrian lighting plan, we want to defragment all of the different kind of resources that we have out there. Fairfax County has an ordinance. We have some things that were customized just for Reston, and we want to pull all of those existing plans, lighting ordinances, to protect the region. This slide already came up, the framework slide. More light is not necessarily better. It's not necessarily safer. This presentation is really designed for a broader audience that maybe isn't familiar with some of the concepts. The American Medical Association and their warning against bright blue-white light. Again, referring back to our master plan, and this is from a 2015 Fairfax Comprehensive Plan for Reston, stating that pedestrian lighting is necessary. So what is pedestrian lighting? Again, for the larger audience, it's really for the foot and the bike pathways and walkways, bikeways and roadways, right? But where street lighting is 30 or 40 feet in the air, pedestrian is human scale. So it's going to be 15 feet or lower. It could be below, way down here, bollard lighting, right? If you're on a walkway, we have bollard lighting here just outside this building, providing pedestrian lighting. It's characterized by lower intensity, pedestrian scale. Okay, so here's pedestrian lighting. This is a image of a crosswalk that's been lighted in East Hampton, New York. This crosswalk has been lighted. You're not going to be able to see it. I'm not going to be able to use my pointer. But the lighting has been recessed into the roadway. That's providing adequate lighting for these people to safely cross this road. Is this type of lighting just appropriate in cute little villages like East Hampton? No. You can see this lighting, same application in Shanghai and other parts of China. So to start to just, promote an awareness about lighting and lighting application, you have to really start to understand the 4 different types of light pollution: glare, light trespass, overlighting, sky glow. Glare is that in your face. It's prohibited. It's not safe, right? Think of a car coming down a dark road towards you. If I leave my high beams on. Okay, light trespass is unwanted light that's poorly directed. The idea is to really, most of the lighting in the world should be directed at the planet. Right? So why are we directing it at the sky? Why are we directing it horizontally into somebody's window? Okay, overlighting. The analogy I like to use here is, if you were out watering your lawn and 50% of the water was running onto the sidewalk, down the sidewalk into the gutter, and off to the water processing plant, that's wasteful, right? Does absolutely no good for that grass. And then sky glow is that haze of light that is happening all over the planet that's separating us from the view of the rest of the universe. Okay? If you went to Times Square right now and looked up, you would not be able to see one star. And there are plenty of instances of sky glow that we're creating right here in this region right now. Okay? And, any unshielded light is contributing to sky glow. And a single light source can travel hundreds of miles. The light travels up, it reflects back to the planet from all the particles, the clouds, and things in the atmosphere. And I don't think we want to lose that separation between ourselves and the rest of the universe. Okay, so how do you avoid all that? Light only be on when needed. Only be on when needed. So if the tennis courts close at 9 o'clock and that area goes dark at 10, that's a win-win, right? They can be programmed so that they switch off at 10 o'clock. Tennis players are long gone. Only the area that is needed. So if you need path lighting over at the tennis courts, go from the courts to the cars, light just the path. Don't light that entire park and ruin it for all the neighbors. Be no brighter than necessary. Minimize blue light emissions. Be fully shielded. Okay, this is Fairfax, right from Fairfax County lighting ordinance, lighting guidelines. Okay, this is unacceptable and unshielded. This is shielded. Okay, you can see good examples of this all over Fairfax, all over Reston, too. Especially Reston is very good at this. Who are some of the worst offenders? The clusters, right? And the homeowners. Needing a lot of light pollution. All right, this is in this full cutoff Cobra head street light, the lamp is fully recessed into the fixture. All of these, the light is fully recessed into the fixture. There's zero light emission above 90-degree horizontal plane. Okay? In this example of the Cobra head, the lamping mechanism is exposed there. So if we all do that, look what we get. Look at the stars. See the Milky Way cutting through here? Happy neighbors. So this is a perfect example of a win-win situation. There's lighting out here. Light out there, right? That walkway is lit, but it's very well shielded. Here's our reference materials. The International Dark Sky and the Illuminating Engineering Society are a partnership that are helping to provide good lighting plan guidance. Tony, I think we are back to you.
So, I just want to have it just in case we needed to go back to anything. But really talking about our next steps and why we're coming to you folks is for input. We do have the maps available here. Bill had printed them out to where we're thinking. I hope you at least get an idea of what we struggled through. Everybody has their opinion on lighting, and you can obviously see that. So some of our next steps are really to present a draft to the board, evaluate, consider feedback. We've already done the environmental group. We want to hear from you folks as well. And really taking it to the broader community, specifics for RA properties, pathways, and kind of see where we're going of next steps to put those tools in RA's hands there. Really, it gets beyond my level of expertise on how to do lighting fixtures and stuff like that. I'm not an architect. That's not what we're trying to do. But what it really gets down to is maybe hiring consultant for RA properties, what to do about the lighting, and that doesn't really.
Are you sure you guys couldn't just do it yourselves? Because I mean, it seems like you've really got it 90% of the way there.
You know how much we argued about this and that, and going out there is hard to do, and everybody has their opinion, and we realize people come to you folks for, you know, we want lighting in our community, or we don't want it. Hunter Woods is an example of one that wanted to complete some lighting that was already there. So we tried to put, go out there and go, well, if there's already lighting to this, and then it stops at a specific point, kind of like a dead spot, that might be something that you don't want. We tried to do transit areas to get to two locations, and we tried to keep people on the main roads, because I think that's what happens at the end of the day. So getting some of that Fairfax data is kind of a next step.
But if you want to hire us, we'll take the money.
I don't want your money. I don't want part of this. This is, so you turn it over.
We can pay you what they pay us.
Exactly.
I wouldn't discount the idea of hiring a consultant, but I like your idea in some respects, where we could actually benchmark with some other communities and see what they've got written up, and see if we could transfer that to Reston and maybe save some money, maybe a little bit more work for us, but there's possibly other communities that have existing guidelines.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we need a consultant or not. I do know we need community input, I think, in a lot of these places. And it could be that, like in the appendix, let's say the community says, yeah, we'd like a few lights. We can all agree on that placement without a consultant. I don't know. I've never gone through that.
Lighting's very subjective, as you said. I think your first sentence or two, lighting's very subjective. Yeah. Some people will find what I find just marvelous. You're an astronomer, you love looking at the skies, I love looking at the skies. There are plenty of people that live in Reston that don't enjoy looking at the skies, they just want to have a well-lit path.
So, yeah, I think it's
so the community is going to be well divided on this, is my suspicion.
Oh yeah, and this might just be a guideline to say, hey, when somebody comes to you with, we want this area lighted, it could be a backdrop to what, next steps to do. Hey, well, we see that there's a way around it here, or you know what? This is a direct cut through to the Wheelie Metro station. People take that. It's not just a nature trail. It's also a commuter trail. But the walk-through glade is not a commuter trail. That one's an easy one that I can always point to.
That trail that was south of Lawyers Road, was that what that was? Way down the far south part
yes,
there?
Yes.
I mean, you don't light it at night because nobody's going anywhere down there.
But yeah, it's not a travel corridor. And I don't know if just recreational use would even be considered, i.e. the homeowner saying, I'd love to walk my dog back there, but it's too dark. Is that justification?
I suspect the people that live there love it.
Yeah, no, they...
Right, so I don't want to be the one that says, hey, we're going to go throw a bunch of lights there.
Yeah,
if you'd like to start a big fight with a bunch of people attending, that's probably the way to do it.
That's what we live for.
It sounds like fun. I'll join as a non...
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So on our statement of purpose, it says, this map is an attempt to present a nighttime lighting strategy for Reston on behalf of pedestrians and cyclists in our rapidly developing community. And it ends with, this map is intended to be a starting point for discussion of lighting needs for non-motorized transportation in Reston. So that's exactly what it is, a starting point.
I'm impressed. I think that's a great place to start, and I hope that map's memorialized. And I mean, I obviously don't fully understand everything you've done, but it's so thoughtful, so logical, the way you've gone about this, the time that you've spent on it. I'm impressed. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you very much.
I just had one comment.
So I'm sorry, but there's two. This is the official one. This draft has my notes on it, and I'll give you a copy of that, but that's not for public distribution. It says field map.
Too late.
That one, or a future version of that, would be for public consumption.
It's going to be on Dropbox. What are they going to do?
And to say thank you.
My only comment was, this is one of the hardest working, sorry, I'll wait for Anna to finish.
No, I understand. No, that's.
Go ahead, Richard.
Are we done now? Okay. Sorry. This is one of the hardest working groups ever in Reston. Nick and I, 2 DRB members, were on this, and they wore us out in the first 6 months. Finally, we just said, we give up. Not that we had other issues at the time, but these guys, I can't even begin to, I'm still on your email chain, so I watch all this stuff. And to get to this point in the last 2 weeks, there must have been 50 emails going back and forth between you guys. So who's going to say this? How are we going to do it? Who's going to slides and so on? And I think we've all been kind of pressuring for something to happen. And if this is just a preliminary guideline, I don't know where it goes from here, but if Reston somehow sort of adapted this as a general application to lighting here, and whether this is the final product or you need to fine tune it a little bit or something, that gives us a tool, then we can say when someone else comes in and says, I want to light the path down in the appendix or whatever it was you were calling it.
Yeah.
We can say it's not shown, it doesn't go with what we're saying. You know, it gives us a tool.
Exactly.
That's how I see this can most benefit us and Reston.
Yeah,
So
and
hopefully somehow it can be memorialized into the process somehow.
And if it's done right and balanced, it'll become a good marketing tool for.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
And likely it becomes part of our official guidelines at some
Yeah,
point.
I think eventually we get to that point, yeah.
And just to add to that, you mentioned community outreach, just raising awareness in the community, because I'm on your side too. I enjoy stargazing with my family. I enjoy the open spaces being dark at night and light in the areas when necessary. So I think that's a good start, though.
And if I could make a point, Elizabeth is, she's kind of bringing up the education point of view. A lot of people in Reston aren't aware of the existing lighting ordinance. This might be a way to kind of spread the word a little better. And particularly if they're cluster, if they get the word through this and then their cluster is starting to consider relighting, they may have heard it through this pathway, and that may.
Right, and I think it's important to drive the point home that it's never an anti-lighting statement. It's always a anti-bad lighting design statement. Lighting is good. I'm not against lighting. I'm against bad light design. And we're seeing that come up too much, and we can really ruin this town, by allowing that to happen. If we can stop it and rein it in, it's a win-win situation. If you just shield and direct the light. And the zoning concept would have ideally set lumens associated with them as a reference. So where you'd say zone 0 is a zero light zone, residential lighting would have a guideline for the amount of illuminance that would be allowed in that zone in different applications.
I would expect that we'll go beyond just design, but we'll also talk about the duration of when you light and when you don't light, which will be critical to our pathways and light trespass.
If I may, I commend the work of the committee. I think a couple of things that came to mind as I was going through the presentation, and I agree. I think we need to focus in the future very specifically on the design criteria that go into lighting fixtures, et cetera, because I think there are a lot of things that we could do. in terms of how we use bollards, directed light, et cetera, but I think as importantly, been associated with the master planning process for a long time, and we're looking at Reston growing, and we're looking at the village centers going through some major transformations over the next few years. Safety and home value are highly correlated. And so I think we've got to be very aware of where people want to walk and want to ride at all times, that they do it safely. Otherwise, it will have an impact on our home values. Especially around the village centers is where I would put a lot of emphasis. And I live in the Lake Ann area, and I appreciate your field work. I would recommend you do some field work in the north, that area as well, because I too am an amateur astronomer, and I love where I live, and I take full advantage of it. But for 14 years, I had a big dog that needed to be walked at about 1 in the morning, and I felt very insecure on some of the paths. So even just a little bit of light, and I had my flashlight, I had everything else, but I think we have to take that into consideration. I agree, this is going to be very subjective, and I think you're going to hear what I just shared, sort of two sides of the coin. It's going to come out.
You can stake out one end, I'll stake out the other.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
And that's something, I mean, we joked about it. We're like, well, maybe we could just hand out flashlights to all the residents and call it a day. It might be cheaper.
They could say Reston Association.
Exactly, the little giveaway. But, I mean, you may have certain things where you go, well, let's get a path here that's lighted because we have an alternate way. You might have to come to those type of consensus.
I don't think we'll solve.
Does that mean?
I don't think we'll solve it tonight.
Yeah, and that's where I think you'll go back and forth on it. And it took a lot to just get that to paper because we had so many of those, and that's a very valid
But we're
point.
associated with a lot of these village center area redevelopments coming our way, and I think this is going to be a big issue because there are going to be a lot more people out and about.
And we did talk about that, Ken. Larry brought up the idea of that, was it a quarter miles?
That was one of the original goals.
Yeah.
Quarter mile, you look
those
at
are
that
kind of noted on there. Some of
Walkability
the
to the centers, you go up from there and then you figure out what the pathways require as far as lighting. So we have talked about it, but we have not looked at it.
And that helped. Both of us are on the multimodal transportation committee too, so we do see some of these projects coming ahead. There's a bunch of other people that are out there noticing those in the first place that kind of report back on some of this. So we saw those. I see the village centers being a focal point to that. And
we encourage you to examine the map closely. Make whatever comment. I'm not sure how to do that, but make whatever record whatever comments you have. We're just a small group. You guys have a lot more experience. You see changes to be made. This thing can be easily tweaked. It's just a first draft. So
great.
And I'll put in a gratuitous plug that if we do have another DRB member who would like to join the ranks, we'd love them.
Now that all the work's done, sure.
Well, there's more work to do.
You'll be back, Richard.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your effort so far, and looks like we have some more work to do, so thank you very much.
A lot of hard work.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a couple of agenda items that I added, and I'll be as brief as I can.
Someone to time him for 3 minutes.
Yeah, 3 minutes each. Hopefully I'll break that record. Design guideline edits that we've been working on for quite some time. I finally presented to the Board Operations Committee a week or two ago, and it took me less than 3 minutes to present them and for them to say yes, looks good, and they approved them unanimously with no comments. So I think the next thing is we have to have a public hearing.
So that would have to be scheduled at the June meeting because we have to post them on the website and we have to post them for at least a 2-week period. So we would hold the hearing at the June DRB meeting.
Okay. So I believe I will not be able to attend the June meeting, so we'll have to have a substitute.
Were you saying we would do it at the June meeting? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
That would be the next step, would be at the June meeting. Sorry. I suppose we could do it in July, I suppose, but technically the next step, we would usually schedule it for June. But if we want to wait until John is here, we could schedule it for July.
Okay, I'll be here in July. If you
Is
want
that
to wait.
okay?
I would just suggest we do it in July, because John would be the one to answer all the questions that'll come up from the multitudes that will show up.
We will schedule it for July.
Those well-attended July meetings.
Yes, for sure.
So we will hold the hearing at the July meeting.
Okay, great, thank you. So I probably need to have a sub chair for the July meeting also. I don't know if,
You mean for June?
I'm sorry, June, excuse me.
You still need a sub for next week, too. Was that you again?
Yeah, sorry.
No one's volunteered.
And I'm willing to
Next
fill in
week.
for others on other dates, I just couldn't make that one.
So someone has to volunteer. That's one time I can't do it because I got a project I'm going to be presenting, so, I mean, I could do it, but, come on.
I nominate Graham.
I'm already there next week.
Need a professional, so
I
you all
can do
think about that.
I can probably do it. But let me verify it tomorrow on my calendar at work.
And I'll be glad to sub in the future. Okay.
Could you cover me in June?
Oh, I can.
You're not
Depends on
here.
when.
Just kidding.
You first week?
Kidding. Okay.
All right. One of the things that I had a meeting with Julie and
What's your name?
who else was there? Yeah, there's what, 4 of us there.
Those people.
And we had a good discussion about the strategic plan that we put together a while ago. Some folks were part of it, and some folks weren't. I don't recall who all wasn't there.
People.
But we partnered with,
the new.
except were you the only one?
I wasn't there.
You weren't there, okay. So we had a bunch of meetings with the RA board and DRB and staff and our attorneys, and had a lot of good discussions. I think we met 4 or 5 times, something like that. 3 times.
6.
Seemed like more. Well, we had a lot of good discussions and developed this draft strategic plan. I don't know if any of you have sort of refreshed your memory, but it had been a while since I looked at it, so I was glad that they brought it up again. And so I wanted to at least bring it up tonight. I think it's worth everyone going back and reading through it, and maybe at our July meeting, we talk a little bit more about it specifically. As part of that, develop our work plan for the next year, maybe the next couple of years, about things on here we want to work on and accomplish. And maybe we actually take a vote in terms of making it, instead of draft, we'll make it an official strategic plan, and probably change the dates to like 2017 to 2020, something like that. But a great example is line item number 1, have at least 1 DRB member attend the P&Z meeting. It's great, we've been sort of doing that, but maybe one of our ideas is to have someone specific go and then report back to us the results of that meeting. That's one example of things that could be in the work plan, but maybe we pick 3 or 4 things that we're going to work on and focus on over the next year or so. So I'll plant that seed for now, and then let's talk about it a little bit more in July. And if you could come with ideas for a work plan, that would be great, and any revisions to this document that you might request. Let's see. In terms of the process for design guideline edits, I think we touched on that. Is there anything else we need to?
Yes, so the conversation was that we wanted to identify a process that everybody could come to an agreement to for how we tackle guideline edits. I think for those of you who went through the last batch of guideline edits, there were several. It took us about 2 years when Barbara did those. And the bylaws actually address that we should be looking at the DRB should be looking at the guidelines once a year. So I think when we met with John, the conversation was that we should try to at least look at some guidelines every year so that we never get to the point where we're reviewing 30 guidelines and take 2 years to do it.
so that we identify maybe 2 or 3 guidelines at least every year that we would want to look at and just do it, on an as needed basis based on things that come up on a regular basis that might be problematic with guidelines. But that we just do it on a regular basis, at least once a year, as opposed to try and wait to do it, every 3 or 5 years when you're then looking at so many guidelines that it becomes such a cumbersome process.
And I think we're actually required to do that, aren't we?
For the bylaws, the DRB should be looking at it once a year.
Yep, just for the record, all the years I've been on here, we have looked at the guidelines every year.
Yeah.
Never missed it. Sometimes we say, they're just fine.
I think you look at them every
We always bring it up. I mean, we're right there with the bylaws. Some years we just don't do anything. That's fair.
It's reaching perfection after all the years that they've been in place, so there's less to do.
Yes, really. Except for the one about concrete blocks.
Except for the concrete blocks.
Yeah. Well, so that brings up our next line item. I know staff is at the forefront of that, and you probably have some great ideas for things that we may want to tackle.
Well, staff likes obviously to have a little bit more flexibility and get some of these approvals done and, before bringing them to DRB and some of the easier projects. We kind of looked at a couple of things that we identified that we think would be a good fit for that. We see a lot of, so I placed about 6 or 7 in your Dropbox under proposed design guideline edits as some suggestions from staff as to what they'd like to look at. They vary. Clusters, lots of matches to previous approvals, and current guidelines don't allow us to approve those. We would believe it'll make the process easier for the homeowners as well, and we're looking at a lot of things that we're already currently approving. So we can, or you can look at these and we can touch on it maybe next month, or I don't want to put too much into July, but read through what we're looking at in the notes and see what you think and give us some suggestions. Oftentimes we're seeing there's no application and it goes straight to consultation. So the division is kind of, it's difficult. There's not a level for staff. Not a level for staff, and we're really trying to, increase the opportunity for the homeowners to get these easy type approvals through so they can start the projects quickly. So that's where we're at. So that's what we, as staff, would like to look at, some opportunities for that.
So we need to look at those between now and our next meeting.
If we could, that would be great. I put some suggestions at the top of what they're looking at, what they're thinking, and attached it to the actual guideline itself, so you can relate to where the different levels are now, and if we have some opportunity for improving there.
One comment I had was, and we talked about it a little bit before, was on for the village centers and major commercial redevelopments. It seems to me that our guidelines are pretty bare and sparse and could be developed a lot more. And I think it's going to be a lot of work to actually put together a really good design guideline that gives developers a little more predictability and gives us a little more to fall back on. Right now it's pretty subjective, and I think it'd be better to tighten it up a little bit and help people understand what we're going to approve and not approve. So I don't know what you guys think of that, but I definitely ask you to think about that between now and the next meeting also. Likely we're probably going to need some help from a consultant or someone like that to help us get that one done, if you all agree.
If the county keeps changing zoning regulations, we're going to have to be racing to keep up.
Yeah, that's right. So, any other comments, things we need to talk about?
Just one question. What are we going to do about the lighting thing? I mean, I know it's informational only, but are we going to do anything with the map or give them comments, or what are we supposed to do with that beautiful map that they produced?
At this point, I think it's just their draft. They're going to try to finalize it. I believe they'd like comments, the suggestions.
I think they're going to the board now.
But yeah, they're going to the board. When did they say?
Right, I think Julie and I were just talking, trying getting them before the board to get a reaction as well, but any comments and thoughts that you have on things that they should keep in mind? I know you put a lot of time early on, but now you're getting to see where they were. So anything that you've got, I know that they would welcome in advance of that, and Julie and I will work on a timing for them as to when next to come. So just anything that you've got would be very much welcome on that.
Unless we were to find a design consultant who lives in Reston and knows Reston as well as these people did. I mean, to me, it seems that this got as far as it did and seemingly as well done as it did because these people live here, they care about this place, and they didn't have to spend 6 months getting to know us. And it just concerns me that having done all this work, we don't then go back to ground zero when we hire a consultant and basically recreate this with just a few tweaks. We should be able to take off from this point and start picking fixtures and light levels and not redoing and retreading, because it struck me as very thoughtful, careful work, as good as we would have gotten from any paid consultant.
Right, and I appreciate that, and maybe if the suggestion is that you guys help provide guidance at that point, that's great. In terms of what, I mean, it's funding and fixtures, but it's going to be helpful to us because it's our property. And as we have a capital projects list that is showing things that need to be replaced, I'd hate to put money into something that's not useful and not effective anymore, especially as lighting fixtures are changing. We want to put the right stuff in. So if one of the next suggested steps is that you kind of take that plan and start really digging in, maybe with the lighting group and saying what makes sense where. I mean, looking at the different facilities and areas that they're considering, that would be great if you want to make that a work plan item, for the.
I mean, that's the kind of thing that, because I just don't want to see this kind of drift off into the ether. It's a huge amount of work. I mean, would it make sense if we got a couple of us together to meet with them, get copies of that map, sit at a table and go through it, and really give them some input so they don't just kind of drift off and we're not really part of what's going on? Mm-hmm. How do we take that next step, I guess, is all I'm asking, something like that. A couple of us met with them, got copies of the map, and sat at a table. Wine and cheese is always nice.
Well, I think they could probably
kind of move on from there. But somehow, what's the next step is all I'm trying to say. That might be it.
Yeah, no, I think that would be, if that's what the DRB is interested in, then kind of communicating that tonight and say this is the next step. We want to put a panel together to work with them, and then being able to say that, Julie being able to say that to the board of here's the DRB's interest, and next step taking this. And
it seems like something that eventually we're going to want to have some kind of official vote on, and put that into our design guidelines so that as Reston wants to add lights, we have here's where you put them, here's where you don't, and here's the fixtures.
Here's the type.
Like you said earlier, it'll become one of our guidelines, basically.
Yeah.
These areas you don't put lights, these areas you do.
Mm-hmm. I don't know where lighting is in your work plan, but I think that given the changes in what lighting is available to our residents now with LED and the downlighting like she showed us tonight, and that certainly came up, even if, I hate to bring up sore subjects, but the soccer field thing, I mean, that was a huge issue on, why so many people were like, no, you can't because of the lighting, and yet we know, even with the ballparks, that there's some ways that you can light. And we've got a couple different groups looking at lighting, whether it be EAC, the pedestrian lighting, and it's all still going to have to come back to you all to say, here's some general guidance, whether it's our common ground or residential. And I don't know what your workload is, but it seems like things are coming together on lighting in a number of ways.
And you'll get more coming in, for us. I know we've got one of the capital projects is to look at the tennis court lighting at North Hills. So, it's coming.
And we have aging infrastructure on many of our tennis courts on the lighting, so that's going to
Nature House is interested in doing some light pole replacements and adding lighting, so the timing is perfect. And your assistance, if you're willing to put in some extra time in a different way, would be great.
So right now, you and Nick are on the, or
Yeah, we
sort of on
both,
the
I mean,
committee?
after probably about 6 months, it was too many meetings for me, and I just said I got to get off. And Nick did too, but, I mean, I would go back in on this specific to work with their map and, I guess, put together recommendations, say we should make this our guideline, or whatever, wherever we end up.
Maybe a panel of 3 of you, or to do it,
I'll be one of
Are
them.
there other people that are interested in getting involved?
Neil said he was.
It's very interesting to me, but I have evening client meetings and, 3 nights a
Saturday
week.
morning.
3 nights a week out is already killing me. So, sorry, I know I would do what you did the first time around. I'd do about 3 meetings and then.
We're only talking 1 or 2 meetings here. This is not like a forever thing, right?
No. Are any of your lay members interested?
Let's see, who's not here? Nick and Linda.
You can volunteer that.
Sign them up.
I would love to do it. The only caveat is I think most of you know my personal situation, so those things will come up. But as interesting as this is to me, and if you're willing to see me go there when I can.
If Ken goes, I have to go.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, we're not talking about becoming another thing where I was going to, like 10 more meetings, and that's why I said enough, but this is like 1 meeting, maybe 2 meetings.
I'd welcome that opportunity.
There you go, Saturday morning, 10 o'clock.
Say what?
So I don't know, it's just.
I'll try to attend.
What if we
Starbucks card.
get something set up and throw it out to the DRB, and whoever can join, joins?
I think that's a good idea.
Because some of us might be interested in going when we can, but.
Well, it does, it helps always to have continuity as you build a knowledge base, and that's one of the reasons Richard should do it, because he's been on so many lighting task forces.
Yeah, you should go to every meeting there is, Richard.
I do already. I do already.
I don't think I.
No,
So
but let's
maybe
see.
we can communicate, maybe you guys can let Larry know that there's an interest in helping take it to the next step and going ahead and putting some lighting guidelines
Yeah,
together.
I like the idea of
Lighting
having.
worked
Lighting workshop or whatever you want.
I think having some specific people like Neil, Ken, and me, and then anybody else that can come, can come. Because otherwise it can be like last night, everybody was invited to go to P&Z, Bruce and I went. It's just, I know everybody's busy. You weren't
Thank
there,
you.
were you?
By the way.
No, I didn't think so.
I was-
You said you were following, you followed me.
I went to Baldwin
Right.
probably
Okay.
around the same time, but I have T-ball coaching practice. T-ball
Lord
practice
knows,
coaching
can't get, well, okay.
Monday nights.
Yeah, so
Like
I guess
Neil,
let's tell Larry that we got 3 people that'll meet with them.
Yeah.
Copies of the map.
So for me, night meetings are harder, but if there's a daytime meeting or lunch meeting, that's easier for me, just personally.
Most of those people, they all work, so they've been doing nighttime meetings pretty much exclusively.
Those are tougher for me.
Okay.
So if you could ask them to help coordinate a meeting, I guess, or you are liaisons, is that what?
We'll call Larry, yes, we'll talk. I talked to Larry
Staff will
yesterday.
communicate. Yeah.
All right, great.
But if you want to put it in the notes that you've decided that too tonight, that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Here, that's okay. All right, we have some work to do for next couple of meetings, and
Yes.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great meeting.